All right, we're live. Morning, everyone. Today, we have as a guest on the show Dr. Natasha Campbell-McBride. She's an author and a doctor, obviously. Why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
Hello, I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm Dr. Natasha Campbell-McBride. I'm the creator of the GAPS concept and GAPS nutritional protocol. I'm a medical doctor. I live in the UK and I'm a farmer as well, a regenerative farmer. And I like very much the picture that Jeffrey has made of me with a clipboard amongst the chickens. That's lovely.
My partner, Allie, she's very talented with graphics. So she makes me the best thumbnails. So this all started a couple weeks ago. One of a friend of yours, Cav, I saw in a Mark Passio natural law group saying that veganism goes against natural law. And I'm a vegan, longtime vegan, and I really appreciate you coming because I've noticed over the years of doing activism that I've learned the most talking to people that I disagree with the most. We kind of tend to surround ourselves with people that are like-minded, and it really isn't necessarily the best environment for learning, I think. So I asked Cav to come on the show, and he was like, I actually know my doctor might be able to be a better spokesperson for me on this subject. And he sent me in your direction. So I emailed you, and here we are. So you're familiar with natural law and Mark Passio?
Absolutely. And I have a great respect for his work.
That's awesome. That's always something cool to hear. So I have a bunch of questions before we get into the GAPS diet.
So shall we talk about veganism? If that is a subject that is interesting to you, shall we talk about it?
About what?
About vegetarianism and veganism. Would you like me to talk about it?
Sure. Yeah, you could go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, you wrote a book called Vegetarianism Explained, correct?
Yes, I've written a book called Vegetarianism Explained. Here it is. It's not a large book, but I think it explains the concept very well. And it's the only book that I know of that explains it correctly in those terms. Mm-hmm. So what we need to understand that Mother Nature has given us two groups of foods on this planet: animal foods and plants. Animal foods are the meat, fish, eggs, and dairy. Plants are fruit, vegetables, grains, beans, greens, berries, and nuts and seeds, and all sorts of other things. And one of the major scientific discoveries that was made last century, in the 1930s, is that the only things in nature that can digest plant matter, plants, are microbes. Only balanced microbial communities can digest plants. Mother Nature used this scientific discovery, this scientific fact, in creating a digestive system of a cow, or a goat, or a giraffe, or zebra, or deer, or another herbivorous animals. Mother Nature gave them several enormous stomachs. This group of stomachs is called a rumen, full of microbes. So the cow doesn't digest the grass herself. It's that microbial community in her rumen that does the work for her. It breaks down the grass into nutrients that the cow then can absorb, assimilate, and build its body from it. We human beings don't have a rumen. We have a small stomach, which produces hydrochloric acid. Acidity in your stomach can be below 2 pH, below 1 when you're hungry. Very hostile environment for microbes. That is why in a healthy human stomach, plants are indigestible. There are virtually no microbes in there because it's a very hostile environment for them. Hardly any microbes survive in the human stomach. But stomach juice is perfect for digesting meat, fish, eggs, and dairy. The hydrochloric acid, pepsin, and other elements of the human stomach juice. They break them down, and then the whole mixture moves into the several meters of intestines where absorption of food happens, where the last steps of digestion get accomplished and the food gets absorbed. And the only things that can absorb properly are the things that got digested properly. And the digestion begins in the stomach. So animal foods, and only animal foods, are the feeding, building foods for human body. They build our heavy bones and muscles and brain and heart and lungs and liver and all the other organs in the human body. They build our physical structure. If you take water out of the human body, and about 70% of your body is water by weight, and about 90% by molecular count is water. After you've taken it out, what's left, the dry weight of the human body, is about 50-50, protein and fat. When we analyze human protein and human fat in a laboratory, we discover that they are almost identical in their biochemical structure to proteins and fats we get out of meat, fish, eggs, and dairy. Plants have a lot of proteins. The most researched protein in plant matter is gluten. And the more we research gluten, the more we realize nobody can digest it. It damages everybody. And plants have plenty of fats. But the biochemical structure of these plant proteins and plant fats are completely unsuitable for building human protein and human fat. They simply cannot do it. Certain amino acids are missing, other amino acids are in excess, and the whole thing is indigestible. That's the proteins. And the fats are highly polyunsaturated, largely polyunsaturated and monounsaturated. Human body needs those unsaturated fats in tiny, tiny amounts. Only in tiny amounts. So when you've eaten a salad, or you've eaten an apple, or you've eaten a handful of nuts, you'll get enough of those. The bulk of what the human body needs in terms of fats, and 50% of your dry weight is fat. Your heart is sitting in its own chamber of fat, and that is its energy store. The fat uses, the heart, human heart, uses fat for energy exclusively. Your kidneys are sitting in a big chamber of fat. Fat cushions every organ, and fat is a major structure of every membrane in every cell of the human body, and many, many other structures in the body. So it isn't optional for us to eat fat. It's an absolutely essential building material for the human body. And when we analyze human fat, we find that it's identical to lamb fat, pork fat, beef fat, goose fat, butter, ghee, while plant oils are completely unsuitable. In fact, if you eat plant oils which have been extracted by factories out of the plant matter, those are poisons. We've known that for almost 100 years now. They damage the human body on the most fundamental level, and every organ gets damaged, and they cause, they're not just associated, this has been proven now. Plant oils, particularly when we cook with them, cause every degenerative disease in the world. Cancer, heart disease, diabetes, obesity, infertility, Alzheimer's disease, autoimmunity, neurological damage, hormonal damage, any kind of disease in the human body. Nobody should be using these oils. Nobody should be cooking in them. And yet, because all our processed foods are cooked in these plant oils, in canola oil, soya oil, cottonseed oil, sunflower oil, and all these other oils that people buy in big bottles in supermarkets and fry all their food in, and all our restaurant foods are cooked in them, and all our takeaways, all our processed foods that people eat are cooked in them. People are eating large amounts of these poisons. They are the fundamental basis for every chronic disease in our modern world, those sort of things. Traditionally, humanity always cooked on pork fat, lamb fat, beef fat, butter, ghee, coconut oil in tropics, palm oil in tropics, and animal fats largely. And even in the tropics, they're largely cooked on pork fat, because in the tropics, they always ate a lot of pork. So, coming back to the human body and the structure of the human body, it renews itself all the time. Every cell in your body has a short life. These cells work very hard, they get old, they die, they get shed off and removed, and new baby cells are born to replace them every day. In order for your body to give birth to trillions of new baby cells, building materials are required. What are these building materials? Water, protein, and fat. And the proteins and fats that are appropriate only come from animal foods: meat, fish, eggs, and dairy. Plants that we eat sit in the human stomach not doing much. They're not digested to any large degree in the human stomach. Then they move through intestines where absorption of food happens. They can contribute some juices, some phytonutrients, antioxidants, phenols, salicylates, and other things. They can contribute some vitamin C. But the bulk of what your body is made of and what it requires to maintain its physical structure and heal any damage, they cannot provide. So they go through all your intestines and then they land in the bowel, in the large intestine, where majority of the human gut flora lives. That's where the majority of all those microbes, the microbial community that lives in the digestive system of a human being lives. And that's where they can be digested to a certain degree, because only microbes can digest plants. Nobody else on this planet. And what happens in the rumen of a cow happens in the bowel. But the difference between humans and cows is that in a cow, her rumen is at the beginning of her digestive system, before absorption of the food happens. In us human beings, our equivalent of a rumen is at the end of the digestive system. Too late. All the absorption already happened higher up. That is why the only foods that feed and build human physical body, the physical structure we live in, and maintain this physical structure and heal any damage are animal foods: meat, fish, eggs, and dairy. This is a fact. It is a scientific fact, and it is a fact from the point of view of the grand creator. So that's what our vegans and vegetarians need to understand. So there are vegetarian cultures in the world. I traveled to India several times, and I specifically studied vegetarianism and veganism in India. And what I've discovered there, that traditionally the vegetarianism in India and veganism was born out of poverty. People just can't afford. There are so many people in India. India is highly, it's the most populated country. People are everywhere. And many of these families can't afford to eat the animal that they've grown. They sell that animal to wealthier people, and the money that they get, they can then buy rice and beans for the rest of the year for the whole family. So they are vegetarians out of poverty. But when they have a chance to eat meat, they will never say no. And all the Indians who live along any waterway, lakes, rivers, sea, ocean, the most important piece on their plate is fish, seafood. They all eat a lot of fish, seafood, because that is an animal food. And also, why do you think a cow is a sacred animal in India? Because without a cow, these poor families will not survive. She gives them an animal food that can sustain the physical bodies of these families. She gives them milk, cream, butter, ghee, cheese. That is why you can be prosecuted for killing a cow in India. And also these families have a lot of chickens, ducks, they collect eggs, and they would eat every egg that they can, their chickens produce. They add them to their vegetables. And that way they manage to survive, to maintain their physical structure. The Western style evangelical veganism has arrived into India in the 1930s with the books of Nathan Pritihin, who was a New York Jew, who was a devout vegan. He's written very successful books. For some reason, I don't know why. These books have been translated into many languages and spread around the world. And Nathan Pritihin himself developed 3 forms of leukemia at once. He struggled and struggled. He refused to start eating animal foods, and he struggled and struggled for 25 years. He tried to overcome this cancer and eventually succumbed to it and die from it. And indeed, majority of long-term vegans finish up with neurological illnesses, immune illnesses, cancer, because they are not feeding their bodies. So it is possible to be a healthy vegetarian as long as you eat enough animal foods to sustain the physical structure of your body. Enough dairy, enough eggs, and occasionally meat and fish. But veganism, when people exclude all animal foods, is not a diet. That's what people in the West don't understand. It is a form of fasting. And in this book, I have a chapter on fasting, on different forms of fasting, how to fast correctly, how to come out from the fast correctly, because I fasted myself and I researched that subject as well. So it is a form of fasting. Fasting is wonderful at cleansing the human body. And indeed, why do we eat plants? We eat them because they are cleansers. They are powerful cleansers. They provide all sorts of cleansing substances for the human body to keep it clean on the inside. But they are not able to feed us. They're not able to feed the human body and sustain its physical structure. So cleansing is wonderful, very therapeutic. Many people have recovered from various illnesses with fasting, just fasting on water, or fasting on juices, or fasting on some selected plant foods, or something else. There are many forms of fasting. But nobody can fast forever. At a certain point, your body will give you a signal. I've cleansed now. I've had enough of cleansing. Feed me. I'm hungry. And the way the body will do it, it'll give you a desire for a roast chicken, for a steak, for eggs and bacon, for a pot of cream, fat, something animal like that. Unfortunately, many vegans in our world, because of their beliefs, because of religious beliefs or political beliefs or other ideas, they don't listen to their body. They override this signal. They force their body to continue fasting when the body is asking to be fed. And at that point, the body has no choice but to start breaking less important tissues to feed vital organs, to feed your brain, your heart, your lungs, your liver, and other vital organs. So the person starts losing muscle. They start losing bone mass. They start losing their connective tissue and other structural elements of their body. And something terrible happens to their brain, because the brain is very high fat organ and it's made out of protein, and it uses, the brain sponges something like 40-50% of all the nutrients in your blood. The brain sponges up. It's a very hungry organ. And the cell turnover in the brain is very rapid. The brain constantly rebuilds itself. It constantly needs building materials. It needs feeding all the time. So what happens in vegans, and we have confirmed that on CT scans and MRI scans, their brain structure shrinks. They lose their brain mass. It shrinks. And that reflects in the behavior and of long-term vegans. They become hangry. This is a clinical term, I'm telling you now, which is made out of two words, hungry and angry. Hangry. Because the brain is starving, these people become angry. They become critical. They become evangelical. They become revolutionaries. And it's the memory suffers. The various other abilities and the cognitive ability suffers in these people. And there is another phenomenon that I have come across in long-term vegans. We now have a large population of recovering vegans. Some people are writing books on this subject, people who have been vegan for 25 years, 21 years. The first book, and one of the excellent books that came out, was a book by Lera Keith, which you would like to have a look at and read if you're interested in this subject. She was a vegan for 20-odd years, destroyed herself, destroyed her body, and then saw the light, started eating animal foods again. And she describes her story very eloquently in that book. And there is a phenomenon that I have observed in my patients, in my clinic, and I met a lot of people who have told me about this phenomenon, long-term vegans who are recovering now. And that is a very interesting phenomenon when the brain is starving to such a degree, the body is starving to such a degree in these people. They have episodes when the conscious mind is switched off and the person has a binge on animal foods. They eat meat, they eat fat, they gorge on these things. And then their conscious mind is switched back on and they feel so ashamed of themselves. So they don't tell anybody about it. They keep it as their little secret. Because very often these people by then have blogs and books and they promoted veganism to everybody. So they don't want to talk about this to anybody. But there are enough vegans who talk about this. And I have seen this in numerous patients. Because in my clinic, I have met many vegans, long-term vegans, who develop mental illnesses. I work with mental illnesses, with immune illnesses, with neurological, hormonal abnormalities, chronic illnesses with people. And I had a lot of young people in my clinic who were perfectly healthy youngsters until they, for whatever reason, decided to become vegetarian and vegan. And they destroy themselves. They finish up with mental illness and cancer and various other problems. And the first time I come across this phenomenon was with a young man from Edinburgh. I live in the UK, who was 24 years old. He came to me and he told me the story. He said, one day I was walking along the streets, spreading leaflets about veganism, and a smell of roasted chicken wafted out of a shop. He said, I went into some kind of trance. I walked into the shop. I bought the whole chicken. I came outside. I sat on the curb and I ate the whole chicken. And then I came out of this trance and I was so ashamed of myself. I have never told anybody about this. You are the first person I'm telling this to. This is the typical story that happens. And there is a phenomenon in human beings when they don't want to face some sort of memory in their lives. They want to forget it. They block it. They block it. They don't even remember that episode. So that's what happens with veganism. And all our young people around the world who succumb to the pro-vegan and pro-vegetarian propaganda need to understand it. Where does this propaganda come from? Indeed, we're all under pressure to become vegan and vegetarian. And that's the answers for this question. To this question came to me through farming. I'm a regenerative farmer. 12 years ago, my family purchased a piece of land in England here, in the East Anglia. And it was a very damaged piece of land. There was no soil, literally, because our industrial arable agriculture destroys soil. We're losing soil at an alarming rate. Soil is the skin of our planet. It's the most precious part of nature. That is where all life begins and all life ends. If we lose our soils, life on Earth will cease to exist. And unfortunately, industrial arable agriculture is doing just that. They are losing soil. They're destroying the structure of the soil. So we inherited a piece of land with no soil, virtually. It rains in Britain a lot. That is why grass grows in Britain. So the piece of land looked green. But when we tried to dig holes to plant some trees, we broke our backs, we broke our forks, we couldn't dig a hole. Because the soil was about an inch thick with grass clinging to it, but underneath were big boulders of flint and clay. There was no soil. So I finished up buying tons of compost, organic compost. We employed a local farmer who came with a big digger. So he would dig a big hole for us with a digger. We will fill it with compost and we will plant trees into that compost. And that's how we began with our farm. Now, 12 years later, correct grazing of cows, goats, pigs, chickens, turkeys, and other birds and animals. We now have a good covering of soil on our land. We have huge mountains of compost that we're making, so we could keep covering our gardens and our land with compost. So we are creating soil. And what is soil? Soil is highly organized microbial matrix. It has a structure to it. So when you try to dig soil, plow, till, you destroy that structure. So soil, from being a living matrix of microbial community with humus that these microbes produce, lots of organic matter that they produce, it's a living substance, the soil. It turns into dead dust, it turns into what people call dirt. This sort of dirt and all the fields, all the arable fields in the industrial world are covered in this dead soil. The soils are dead. They've been killed by plowing, tilling, destroying, chopping up that soil, and then applying chemicals, which kill the microbial community. And the humus that the soil used to hold is a carbon polymer. It's almost pure carbon. It's a magical substance which is made by microbes out of organic matter, and it is the biggest reservoir of carbon on our planet. Our industrial agriculture is destroying humus and releasing all that carbon into the atmosphere. That's where vast majority of carbon came from. Then they apply nitrogen fertilizers to these fields made out of natural gas, and majority of these nitrogen fertilizers turn into methane and are released into the atmosphere. That's where methane comes from in the atmosphere. from the activities of our industrial arable agriculture. It doesn't come from belching cows or other nonsense that have been, propagated to the population. So who is propagating this nonsense? Who wants the whole planet to be vegan and vegetarian? Industrial arable agriculture. People who are behind it. People who are selling chemicals to it, selling machinery, producing machines, producing chemicals, writing all these structures for the industrial arable farmers. Now you plant this on day 1, you spray this on day 5, you spray that on day 14, and you use this machine and you use that machine, and one man can work thousands of acres, and it works. Because the scientists have created these hybrid seeds. Every seed is coated in a special chemical coating, and all the structures are worked out, they get the yield. It all grows nicely. So it is easy for industrial arable agriculture today to produce vast amounts of grain, beans, sugar beet, cottonseed, plant matter. Because it's all hybridized, a lot of it is genetically modified, it's all coated in chemicals, and everything's very scientific, and it produces the yield. But when it comes to animal husbandry, meat, eggs, milk, animals just refuse to comply with the industrial model. Our industrial agriculture wants to plow every inch of the soil. So they've taken these animals and birds off pasture, locked them in prisons called confined animal factory operations. They're overproducing grain and beans on those lands, overproducing in colossal amounts. We are dumping grain into the Atlantic Ocean because they've got nowhere else to take it. And then they feed 80% of that overproduced grain and beans to those poor, unfortunate animals locked in prisons. Grain and beans are not appropriate food for animals and birds. They make them sick. They give them cancer, infertility, arthritis, autoimmune illnesses, and so on. So these poor animals, as a result, are killed as young as possible before they develop cancers. And the majority of them are just unhealthy. They're sick. Because Mother Nature created animals and birds to live on pasture. Natural pasture, real pasture, with more than 60 grasses and herbs on pasture. Where do you think the yellow color comes from in an egg yolk? It comes from all the grasses and herbs the chickens consume. Carotenoids and grasses and herbs turn into vitamin A and other substances and give the color to the egg yolk. Where do you think the color in an egg yolk comes from in a supermarket egg? From a synthetic dye that's been added to the feed of the chickens. So which one's going to give you good health? So there are many, many practices that the industrial agriculture does that are very inhumane and very cruel. I'm an organic farmer, a regenerative farmer. So what my farm has taught me that these two things on an organic farm swap. Producing meat, milk, and eggs on an organic regenerative farm is easy. You provide animals with pasture, they're under the sunlight, they look after themselves. You're busy maybe an hour in the morning milking your cows and goats, and maybe half an hour in the evening putting them all to bed. The rest of the day is free. You can even hold a full-time job. My family is self-sufficient. We produce all our food ourselves. We don't buy practically anything. And yet I work. I have enough time because the animals look after themselves. But when it comes to producing plant matter on a regenerative organic farm, that's where all the hard labor is. And the yield is completely unpredictable because it rains at the wrong time, the sun doesn't shine, the temperatures are not right or whatever, and your carrots just don't grow. You do everything by the book, you don't get your yield at the end of it. 1 year, it's completely unpredictable. 1 year you get lots of cabbages and beetroots and no carrots and no courgettes. And next year you get lots of courgettes and no beetroot and no cabbages. So based on an organic model, true, not fake organic, because majority of organic substances in the supermarket are fake organic. That's a new phenomenon we have now. It's a very sad fact, but we cannot trust organic label in supermarkets anymore and could not trust for the last 10 years now. So to produce enough plant matter on a truly organic regenerative farm to feed hordes of vegetarians and vegans is impossible. I'm telling you that as a regenerative organic farmer. because the yield is unpredictable. You may get it, you may not get it, you may get nothing. While producing meat, milk, and eggs on an organic regenerative farming is easy, takes minimal amount of time, and it's a sheer joy. You just provide them with pasture, you provide them with what they need, let them free range, and they look after themselves. So, coming back to the industrial agriculture, the only way to feed large numbers of vegetarians and vegans on our planet is through industrial arable agriculture. True organics cannot provide that kind of population. So those people who own all the corporations in our world, and we can list 3 companies that actually own everything on this planet now, so it is their business model, and it's a perfectly reasonable, sensible from the point of view of business model to make the whole planet vegan and vegetarian. Then they're in business. It's easy for them to produce as much plant matter as they desire. But producing proper meat, proper milk, and proper eggs is very, very hard, painful, expensive, and unprofitable. That is why they've been destroying animal husbandry for years now. And now they have invested billions into producing synthetic meat, synthetic milk, synthetic eggs, and synthetic fish as well. Some of these things are already in supermarkets. So now they are taking the last steps in destroying animal husbandry altogether and destroying a lot of farming altogether. So unless people want to eat these things, they can never, ever replace proper meat and proper milk and proper eggs, proper feeding foods. So that is where the propaganda comes from, because our government departments, our governments appointed and ruled by these corporations. We live in a corporate world, and corporations are in charge of the world right now. So they appoint, no prime minister, no president is elected. They're all appointed. And the agricultural ministries and agricultural departments in all our governments are ruled by industrial agriculture, people who own that agriculture. So they dictate to the governments what kind of propaganda to put out to the population. That is why we have this propaganda to make the whole planet vegan and vegetarian. That's where it's coming from. In the meantime, I have seen endless number of young people and older people who have destroyed their health with vegetarianism and veganism. And the worst, the people who get ill very rapidly, very fast, are those who continue eating commodity crops, who continue eating wheat, sugar, and vegetable oils. The 3 legs that all diseases in the world stand on: flour, sugar, and vegetable oil. So all things made out of flour, out of sugar, and vegetable oils, if a person continues eating it and they become vegetarian or vegan, they become ill very, very quickly. The first thing that collapses in their bodies is the immune system. They start getting one infection after another, and antibiotic, and those antibiotics destroy their gut flora. And they become GAPS people. I'm the creator of the GAPS nutritional protocol. So far, we've been talking about vegetarianism and veganism. We can talk, if we've got time left, I can talk about the GAPS protocol. Okay.
So, growing up, I was hyperactive. Once I hit the American school system, they labeled me as hyperactive, and they tested me to see if I was autistic, and I wasn't autistic. I was just disruptive. And so what, where do you think autism comes from? Because I know, like, in conspiracy kind of truther circles, they say it comes from vaccines. Some people say it's genetic. Some people say it has to do with the gut of the mother during pregnancy. Which one of those do you think?
Both conditions, autism and hyperactivity, are GAPS conditions. You're a GAPster. My first book, Gut and Psychology Syndrome, came out in 2004. But of course, the concept was developed before then. This book explains everything. It explains where these conditions come from and how they developed and why they developed. This second book is called Gut and Physiology Syndrome. That was written quite a bit later. Because what I've discovered, initially I started working with autistic children because my family had to face autism. One of my children was autistic, so I had to face that. And that's where all my work began. That's what transformed me from being a mainstream doctor to a person who understands much more than the mainstream doctors. And the second book, Gut and Physiology Syndrome, abbreviates to the same GAPS, GAPS. Gut and Psychology Syndrome, Gut and Physiology Syndrome. That covers all the physical conditions that are caused by this syndrome. So it has been Gut GAPS Nutritional Protocol, which is described in these two books, has been around now for more than 20 years, 25 years or more. So it is well established. It has become a global phenomenon. It has helped millions of people to recover from all kinds of physical and mental illnesses. So let me explain what GAPS is. Human body is a microbial community. There are far more microbes in the human body than there are human cells. I've described it in my books more than 20 years ago now. And at that time, all the mainstream thought I was absolutely crazy. And now we have plenty of science piling in, proving all of that, confirming all of that. There are far more microbes in your body. There is nothing microbe-free in your body. You have microbial communities in your blood, in your heart, in your lungs, in your joints, in your muscles, on your skin, on all the mucous membranes, in your brain, in your eyes, everywhere there are microbes, and they're in charge. The biggest microbial community lives in the digestive system of the person. That's where the big government, the big ministry, all the commanding echelons are sitting. And they have connections to every microbial community everywhere else in your body, in the digestive tract. And that part is called gut flora, microbial gut flora. Every microbial community in nature functions on balance and on harmony. All kinds of microbes are present in there. The basis of every microbial community in nature are fungi, because fungi grow long myceli, hundreds of meters long, protrusions, and these myceli create a roadwork in the microbial community, because the diameter of myceli is about 100 times bigger than a bacterium is. So bacteria, viruses, other smaller creatures create little hamlets, villages, towns along that roadwork, while the fungi provide the roads, the streets, the lanes, the motorways in that microbial community. And all kinds of other creatures live in there. And every microbe produces a little sticky substances to create a little home for itself, little lair for itself. Nobody wants to live in the open in nature. Every creature creates a little home. And so do these microbes in every microbial community. And all these sticky substances intermix with each other, and they create a substance called biofilm. What is soil that covers our planet, the skin of our planet? It's a biofilm produced by microbes. And if you look at the gut lining of a human being under the microscope, you will see that it's got protrusions and it's covered in this sticky brownish substance. All of these crevices and spaces between those protrusions and villi, they're filled with this brownish sticky substance. That is the soil inside us. That's the biofilm. That is what it is. It's, one of the universal laws is as above, so below, as outside, so within. Everything in this world, in this universe, repeats itself, whether it's on a grand scale of a whole galaxy or whether it's on a tiny, tiny scale of an atom. There is a nucleus and there are things flying around. Everything repeats itself. So the soil of our planet, the skin of our planet, is the same as the soil inside our digestive system that covers the whole digestive system, the whole tennis court. Because if you lay the human digestive system flat, it will cover a tennis court. Some researchers say a football field. So a very, very big area. We human beings are very good at creating imbalances in nature. Every time you take an antibiotic, you kill a proportion of that microbial community in your digestive system and everywhere else in your body. As a result, the balance between all those microbes in that microbial community is gone. The harmony is gone. The microbes which used to control fungi, control viruses, control other creatures in there, suddenly are killed off by that antibiotic. and all the other creatures are left uncontrolled. So they suddenly grow out of proportion. They overgrow. And the balance is gone. And as a result, a benevolent microbial community, when there was balance, there was harmony. And that was a benevolent microbial community which fed you, looked after you, kept you clean, kept your immune system strong and robust. Suddenly, that microbial community turns into your enemy. From your best friend, it turns into an absolute enemy. The first thing that this microbial community does, it damages the gut lining in the person, damages the structure of your gut lining. It becomes porous and leaky. Holes develop in your gut lining as a result. So food doesn't get a chance to be digested properly before it absorbs. It absorbs undigested. And then the immune system finds these undigested foods in your blood, in your lymph, looks at it, says, "You're not food, I don't recognize you," and attacks them. And that's what creates the symptoms of food allergy and intolerance. Nowadays, practically majority of people in the Western world have some kind of food allergy or intolerance because everybody's got damaged gut lining. Why? Because apart from taking antibiotics from the doctors, every bite of food that you buy in a supermarket now is full of antibiotics. Our population is eating antibiotics for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and in between. The major antibiotic is glyphosate. It's a herbicide which is spread on our fields by industrial arable agriculture. It's the most used agricultural chemical in the world now, glyphosate. It's the herbicide called Roundup. People spray it on their lawns, on their driveways, where their children play. And it is a powerful broad-spectrum antibiotic. They spray practically all crops nowadays just before harvesting with glyphosate because glyphosate desiccates the crop and it's easier to harvest. So flour, sugar, beans, lentils, oils, all the seeds that they make oils from are absolutely soaked in glyphosate just before harvesting. When you eat anything plant-based that you buy from a supermarket, you're eating mouthfuls of glyphosate. You're killing your microbial community. You're destroying the balance in there. You're destroying the harmony in there. That's just one agricultural chemical. There are lots and lots more, and they all are present in these foods. So people in the Western world, and in fact it's spreading now to third world countries, to all over the world, humanity is now eating antibiotics, and practically the whole humanity is becoming gapsters. They have damaged microbial community in their bodies, abnormal microbial community, with certain species overgrowing, becoming pathogenic, and with beneficial species missing, killed off by these antibiotics. So they have a leaky gut. Food absorbs undigested, triggering food allergies and intolerances, triggering chronic inflammation in the body, all kinds of reactions, triggering autoimmunity in the body. And they manufacture millions of poisonous chemicals. They eat the food that you eat, that you send there into your digestive system, these microbes, and they convert it into these poisons. So your gut, your digestive system, instead of being a source of nourishment for you, becomes a major source of toxicity in the body. A river of toxicity flows from the gut, absorbs into the blood, into the lymph, gets distributed all over the body. And wherever these toxins get to, they cause symptoms, they cause disease. That is why every chronic disease in the body is gaps. It comes from the activity of this pathogenic microbial community that lives in your digestive system and everywhere else in your body too. Whether it's autoimmunity, whether it's Hashimoto, rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, fibromyalgia, cancer, obesity, heart disease, allergies, chronic cystitis, nephropathy, psoriasis, dermatitis, eczema, hundreds and hundreds of different illnesses. All mental illness is gaps, without exception. What happens with an autistic child? Why do we have an epidemic? We have an absolute epidemic of autism. When I started working as a medical doctor, and when I was training as a medical doctor, and we were studying psychiatric illnesses in the biggest psychiatric hospital in my city where I was trained, Our teacher could not find one autistic individual to demonstrate to us because I was trained in the 70s and 80s. You know, autism was extremely rare. We were diagnosing one child in 10,000 at that time in the world. Extremely rare. Today, we're diagnosing one child in 15. If that's not an epidemic, I don't know what else. From my point of view, every autistic child, practically 100% of autistic children in this world, have been born with a perfectly normal brain. Perfectly normal babies they were. But they acquired abnormal gut flora from mommy and daddy from the beginning, because babies acquire their flora from their parents. And that abnormal gut flora populated their gut, damaged the integrity of the gut wall in this child, and turned the gut into a major source of toxicity. This river of toxicity got into the brain of the child and clogged it with toxicity. How do babies learn? How do toddlers learn, our little babies, our little children? They use their sensory organs: eyes, ears, tactile sensitivity, smell, taste, proprioception in the body. They listen to everybody. They stare at everybody. They look at everybody. They've got this shameless baby stare. They're figuring you out, these babies. They take everything into their mouth because they need to smell, they need to taste, they need to use tactile sensitivity in the mouth and around the mouth. What are they doing? They're collecting information from the environment, these organs. And then these organs pass that information to the brain to be analyzed. And from that information, the brain learns how to live in this world and how to be a human being. The baby learns that this is mommy, this is daddy, I can trust them. This is a toy, I play with it like that. This is food, I eat it. These are other children, I copy them. But if the child's brain is clogged with toxins, it cannot process this information appropriately. This information turns into a noise, into a mush in the child's brain, and the child cannot decipher anything useful from that noise, from that mush. The child develops in an abnormal manner. Depending on the mixture of toxins in the brain, depending on how severe the situation is, the child may become autistic, hyperactive, dyslexic, dyspraxic, may develop attention deficit disorder without hyperactivity, oppositional defiant disorder, but majority, more than 75 or 80% of these children are difficult to diagnose because these diagnostic labels are only descriptive. They don't include within themselves what causes the disorder and how do we get rid of it. It's just a bunch of symptoms that was put into one box, and that box was called autism. Another bunch of symptoms were put into another box, and that was called ADHD. But the reality is that every child is unique. Every child has a unique flora in their bodies and a unique mixture of toxins clogging the brain. That is why majority of children may have a few symptoms of autism, a few symptoms of ADHD, a few symptoms of oppositional defiant disorder, something else, and none of it fits into any diagnostic box. That's why pediatricians may take a long time to give them a diagnostic label, these children. The reality is that the real disorder in these children is GAPS, gut and psychology syndrome.
When I was diagnosed when I was a kid, the first thing everybody told my mother to do was take me off sugar. But what they didn't know is that I started having hypoglycemic fits in class and didn't know how to describe them. And it went from being disruptive to me completely not capable of functioning. And when they saw the hypoglycemic fits, they started testing drugs on me, and I was drooling on myself in class, but at least I wasn't disrupting class. So it just kind of, I was wondering if you had seen this recent study, because I'm just really confused. I've been doing a lot of research on you, and it seems like you say that we don't need vegetables and plants, but then you recommend them in your GAPS diet. And there's a study that just came out. They tested 22 odd thousand people. And they figured out that the bacteria in the feces of the omnivores and the vegetarians were the ones that were causing UBI and leaky gut and all these problems, and or IBS. And the vegans didn't have these bacterias. So I'm just a little confused because it seems like most of your diet is geared completely opposing 300 years of meta science. So I'm just wondering, like, what science you have to back these things that are completely contradictive.
Let me explain.
Go ahead.
So what happened with you in your childhood when your parents removed sugar, which was a correct thing to do, but what they haven't done, they haven't started feeding you with a lot of fat. You had an overgrowth of fungi, Candida in particular, in your body. Candida loves sugars. So, and it's the Candida that causes hypoglycemia, causes these drops in the blood sugar levels in a child, causing hypoglycemic episodes. Overgrowth of Candida. Candida lives on sugars, on carbohydrates, and they would eat potatoes and anything made out of flour. I'm sure your parents continued feeding you bread and potatoes and breakfast cereals and other things. They might have removed sugar, but they've left all these other carbohydrates. So Candida can continue flourishing in your body, and it would lap up all those carbohydrates very quickly and drop your blood sugar level below normal, causing symptoms. If your parents, instead of feeding you all of that, removed all grains, whether they're gluten-free or not gluten-free, doesn't matter, wheat, barley, rice, maize, millet, quinoa, tapioca, couscous, buckwheat, all of it, absolutely all of it, and potatoes, and instead gave you eggs and bacon for breakfast, drenched in pork fat, your blood sugar would have stayed level, stable, and your behavior would have been very, very different. Because apart from 4 cells in the human body, 4 little cells, all other cells in the body prefer fat as a source of energy, including brain cells. Fat is the preferred and most appropriate source of energy for the human body. Animal fat, not vegetable oils. Vegetable oils are poisons. Animal fats. So when a person has hypoglycemia, when a person has unstable blood sugar level, going up and down all day long, because usually what happens with children, they have this breakfast cereal laden with sugar, so their blood sugar goes way above normal. So the body then goes into a shock state. It produces too much insulin. The insulin then quickly drops that blood sugar level below normal. And the child has a hypoglycemic episode. And when the child is hyperglycemic, they're usually manic. You scrape them off the wall. They're all over the place. When they become hypoglycemic, they become tearful, clammy, cold, unhappy. They melt down. So that's usually when somebody gives them something sugary, and up they go again. So they go through this swing, up and down all day long, and that that is the bipolar disorder in children. And instead of changing their diet, instead of removing carbohydrates, not just sugar, you have to remove all processed carbohydrates, everything made out of flour, potatoes, all of that needs to be removed and replaced with animal fat, with eggs for breakfast, bacon, sausages, with some vegetables. And we eat a lot of fermented vegetables in the GAPS nutritional protocol because they're probiotic and they provide enzymes and they help you digest your foods. So instead of eating all those carbohydrates, if the child was moved on the GAPS diet, then the child would have stable blood sugar level. And that so-called bipolar disorder that children get diagnosed with and put on medication, we're putting 2-year-old children on medication for bipolar disorder. All they have is this roller coaster, blood sugar roller coaster, which I describe in my yellow book, in the Gut and Psychology Syndrome book, because of what they're eating, these children. And this blood sugar roller coaster breaks down the mechanisms in the body that handle blood sugar levels. They break down the normal production of insulin, glucagon, and other hormones.
Yeah,
so
this is what that's what I've been told, and what I was told. That's what my mother was told. But what it seemed like to me, and how I am these days, taking the carbohydrate and sugar out of my diet, basically shut my ability to control myself down. I wasn't
No,
able to.
it's not taking carbohydrates out of your diet that shut your ability. Your ability was shut by starvation. Your brain was starving because the brain
My
requires.
brain was starving for glucose,
Not
fume,
glucose. Your brain was
fuel
starving.
form that it was made to most efficiently run off of.
No.
So I don't want to talk about my
No,
anecdote too
the
much.
brain doesn't use glucose for any. The brain does best on ketones.
Isn't fiber from plants the most beneficial bacteria in the gut microbiome? Because that's what this study is saying. From this study that was a meta study of cohort studies, which is a very, very, very high end, very good information. Among the 488 microbial signatures of an omnivore gut microbiome, we found species such as Putriditis, Wadsworthia, and Torx that are linked to meat consumption. These species are implicated in inflammatory diseases such as inflammatory bowel disease, colorectal cancer, and an overall decrease in short-chain fatty acids, and were more likely to be associated with negative cardiometabolic health outcomes. In contrast, signature microbes of a vegan gut biome, such as Lactobacillus, Butyrococcus, and Hominis, were linked to the consumption of fruits and vegetables, for example, due to their specialized role in fiber degradation, and more commonly described as producers of small-chain fatty acids. These observations were also reflected by more signature vegan microbes associated with favorable cardiometabolic health than common omnivorous microbiomes. So what I'm trying to say is there are solutions to these problems where that aren't a detriment to your health. It seems like, while feeding a child who has autism or who has behavioral problems a certain diet, you might be actually causing them harm in the long run. While you might be, while this child might be easier to deal with, you're causing them long-term health problems. And it seems like our science for 200 years has been telling us that, and your diet seems to completely contradict it. And so I'm really confused, because I'm
Okay,
just not seeing where you're getting your science from outside of anecdote, which, as you know, as a woman of science, being a doctor, is very, very, very low caliber information.
let me explain. There are millions of people around the world who have followed the GAPS nutritional protocol. We have, I don't know how many, nobody's done an audit, nobody's counted, but we have certainly hundreds and hundreds of thousands of autistic children who have recovered fully from autism. Hyperactivity is very easy to treat with the GAPS nutritional protocol. And epilepsy, we have hundreds of thousands of children who recovered from epilepsy fully on the GAPS nutritional protocol. We have schizophrenics, we have bipolar people, we have addicts, we have people with depression, people with anorexia who recovered from these disorders, and we have people from all kinds of physical illnesses who have recovered. This is not an anecdote. We have a GAPS Science Foundation. I can give you a website where we're doing science showing that GAPS works. That
people heal on their own. So if you aren't doing control study along with it, you can't make the claims that these people aren't healing on their own.
No,
everyone heals naturally. Children with autism over time, regardless of diet, will some of their symptoms can get better. So without doing a control study alongside it, it is still just anecdote.
On this study, let me answer this question. Your question on this study.
Okay.
All our science is doing is studying bacteria. The basis of every microbial community are fungi. And nobody is studying fungi. And then there are viruses, and then there are protozoa, and then there are archaea, and then there is a myriad of other microbes which our science hasn't even begun looking at. Science, if you want to lose your way in life, follow the science. That's what I've learned from my clinical experience, from more than 30 years of clinical experience, of working with real people, with real illnesses, and with real problems, with real nature. So what this study is basically telling you, that we've looked at bacteria, we've looked at a few species of bacteria, and this is what we found. You're dealing with a puzzle which has millions of pieces in it, unknown number of pieces. They found one piece, they focused on that piece, and based on that little piece, they're telling you, oh, the whole puzzle looks like this. That's what our modern science is, because it is a technocratic science. It will never get to the truth. I know that very well. And from Cochrane Research, and Cochrane, I don't know if you're familiar with that group of researchers and scientists, they tell us, and they have been telling us for decades, that 99% of scientific studies are not worth the paper they're written on, I'm afraid. So sorry to disappoint you in that department.
Yeah, but in order to discount a study, you have to actually go into the study and point out what's wrong. You, especially with metadata, because metadata, there are built-in fail-safes to get rid of bad information. Because when you're looking at a study when you're looking at 20 studies that have been done over 100 years over a bunch of countries, you start to see patterns of the truth. And then when you introduce new studies, and if those don't match up, this is the scientific method. You can't just say, oh, 90% of studies are BS. That's completely wild. And especially coming from a woman of science, you can't just make a statement like that.
This is Scientology.
You're a doctor.
Yes, I'm a medical doctor.
You're a scientist if you're a doctor.
I'm not a scientist, I'm a clinician. There's a big difference. I deal with real people, real illnesses, not with laboratories. And not with and science is manipulated. And the bigger the study is, you need to look at who funded the study, who's behind it.
We definitely do, and we looked at who funded that study, and everything's good. Every article or if you go up on any of these studies websites, it shows who the conflict of interest is and everything. So how come the GAPS diet hasn't had any peer-reviewed studies in over 20 years? You'd think you would have gotten somebody to do a study about it, but there's nothing. So you're asking someone, you're trying to convince a parents of autistic children to do a dangerous diet with no scientific backing whatsoever. But then you're saying, oh, I'm not saying it's really going to fix anything. And then I see you saying that plants are terrible, and then I see you saying that the GAPS diet is a plant-free diet. I'm just really confused, because it's like the information's all over the place, and I keep going back to the idea that it's like, is it worth, like, there is a vegan way to cure your gut. Science has known about it forever. It's very similar to your diet. You've just taken out, legumes and stuff, and you've put in bone broth, which behavioral problems in children, one of the big symptoms is heavy metal disease. So your bone broth is very heavy metal content. So is fish oil. Fish oil has been found, research of clinical trials highlight the possible link with autism and vitamin D. Okay, that's different. So the fish oil, you're recommending people take fish oil. The medical communities, this is from a study, PMC and NIH, the medical community suffered 3 significant fish oil failure setbacks in 2013. Claims that fish oil, EPA, DHA, would stop the progression of heart disease were crushed when the Risk of Prevention Study Collaborative Group, Italy, released a conclusive negative finding regarding fish oil for those patients with high risk factors, but no previous mitochondrial infarction. Fish oil failed in all measures of CVD. They're finding fish oil to give dudes prostate cancer. It's full of heavy metals. And you're double whammy, fish oil and bone broth to children with behavioral disorders. and it's just this scares the shit out of me, because everything, our science, 200, almost 300 years of science goes against this stuff. Yet, you don't have a single peer-reviewed study or even an article, that doesn't have you in it. And you're out here doing thousands of interviews. It seems like you've done a lot of work. You've done a lot of interviews, and I'm just it scares me as a father. It scares the shit out of me, because I just don't understand how you can make these claims with nothing backing it.
So would you like me to answer the question?
I would.
Okay, then please don't interrupt.
No problem.
All right. So plants are extremely difficult for a human being to digest.
According to who?
You're interrupting.
What science are you using?
You're interrupting me. In order to digest plant matter, you have to have a pretty healthy cast iron digestive system. The more the digestive system is damaged, the less the human being can digest plant matter. So the more the digestive system is robust in a person, the more they can digest the plant matter and can handle the plant matter without getting diarrhea, constipation, bloating, and other problems in there. And I will tell you that some 15, 17 years ago now, I was contacted by a group of mothers from America, which had babies with FPIES. At that time, that was a new diagnosis, a new illness that appeared on the horizon. These were babies of a few weeks old, exclusively breastfed babies, vomiting diarrhea. The child was not putting weight on. The child was losing weight, not developing mentally or physically. Doctors did studies, they did tests, and they found that the child is allergic to all protein on the planet. So the parents were told to stop breastfeeding. The child was put on elemental formula made out of soya. And these children, if they follow the mainstream treatments, they finish up either dying or finish up with severe, profound physical and mental disability. So these mothers in desperation contacted me. And I knew that the more the digestive system of a child or an adult is damaged, the less this child can handle plant matter. So initially we tried the first stage of the GAPS introduction diet, which is the most healing diet. This is a specific diet that I've designed. It's a specific variety of the GAPS diet, which heals and seals the gut lining. It closes all those holes in the gut lining. So food starts digesting properly before it absorbs. The fact that these babies were reacting to all protein on the planet meant that they're not digesting this protein. They could not even digest proteins out of mother's milk. The most easy to digest food for a human being on this planet, mother's milk, breast milk. So that means that their gut lining was very, very damaged, severely damaged, very porous, very leaky in these children. So we tried the first stage of introduction diet. It wasn't enough for these babies. So then the logical step was to remove all plant matter out of their diet. So we removed all plants completely, not a speck, not a leaf out of plant kingdom was consumed. These children lived on meat stock. And by the way, in the GAPS nutritional protocol, we do not use bone broth. We use meat stock, which is something very, very different. There is a big difference between meat stock and bone broth. And I described that difference in the blue book in detail. So please read that book, you will understand that.
Is that your latest book?
So these babies were on meat stock. They were on homemade kefir, fermented raw milk. They were on raw egg yolks, they were on liver, and they were on gelatinous meats. And we started getting weight on. The baby started growing. Diarrhea stopped. Vomiting stopped. Rosy cheeks started. The children started developing, started growing. And it went on for years. And for years, we tried with many of these children to return the tiniest amount of vegetable matter into their diet. The tiniest amount of peeled, deseeded courgette and cooked well, or onion, or a bit of carrot that we cooked and then mashed and pureed and in the tiniest amounts. And that amount of plant matter, diarrhea would return. Vomiting would return. So many of these children went on for 4 years, 5 years, 7 years with not eating any plants at all. Rosy cheeks, bushy tails, no disabilities of any description, doing well at school, having friends, having beautiful, healthy life, growing up nicely. So it's these children that I worked with 15 years ago that taught me a very valuable lesson, that human beings can live perfectly well without eating plants at all. We don't need 5 a day. We don't need 7 a day. We don't need whatever the latest number from the government comes from. But we cannot live. But thousands of vegans, sick vegans who cannot think straight, cannot access the right level of information. You know, the true information is up here. It vibrates very, very high, the truth. The lies are down here, and that's all the vegans can access. That's where they dwell, in that low level.
So
vegans.
how do you make a long-term claim like that off of watching some for a few years? It doesn't make any sense.
Because of millions of patients.
Did you have a control study alongside that wasn't doing that diet?
We have
so
a
you
gap
can compare to see the difference between the two diets? I don't think you did. But you're making claims, long-term claims,
foundation where we are
with
doing
very
studies,
little evidence.
where we're doing studies, and prospective studies are extremely expensive.
Where can I see these studies?
On the GAPS Science Foundation.org.
Somewhere else that's not a conflict of interest.
It's not a conflict of interest. They are published.
Of course, it's a conflict of interest.
They are published, these studies. You will find links there with.
I haven't found a single published study on the GAPS diet that didn't have your name on it as an author.
Because science is extremely expensive, and nobody would fund a study in the natural in natural approaches like that. They simply would not, because who's got all the money in this world?
Are you sure it's not because it completely goes against science and simply someone doesn't want to waste money on it and time on it?
They don't.
Then why aren't there more studies on the carnivore diet and more studies on stuff like you're promoting? Because do you promote the carnivore diet? Because
no.
You go on a massive amount of channels that are carnivore channels, and you represent your diet as a no plant diet, but yet if you go look at your diet, it's full of plants, and these plants happen to be well known in history for plants that heal the gut. So I'm just confused on whether or not you think plants are necessary or not, because you say both things depending on who you're interviewing with.
I've just explained to you, if you would stop interrupting me, I've just explained to you that if the digestive system is well, it can digest a lot of plant matter.
With all due respect, you've spoken for 70 of the 80 minutes we've been live.
There's no point for us to talk, because you just want to listen to your own voice.
But you don't want to answer my questions. You haven't answered a single one of my questions yet.
I'm answering your questions.
What science do you have backing your claims?
The science is a waste of time, and it is funded by those who want to control.
But a recent meat and dairy study came out trying to say that animal protein, they set out to debunk animal protein, and they actually found that it's just as good as meat. So it's not just vegans or this vegan conspiracy.
Animal protein is good as meat. That's what animal protein is. Animal protein is as good as meat. Animal protein is meat.
Plant protein, not animal protein. They tried to debunk plant protein and say it's not as good a form of protein as animal protein.
99% of scientific studies are not worth the paper they're written on. This is not
something you can say.
This is not my opinion.
That's some carnivore diet, chiropractor stuff, and you're a neurologist.
This is the conclusion of Cochrane researchers.
You're above this way of thinking.
And you will find that they analyze the scientific milieu in the world, and they will tell you that 99% of published studies are funded by people who want certain propaganda put out into the world. Who's got all the money in their hands?
So who do you think
money for a research on anything that works in this
who wants the world to be vegan, in your opinion?
Global corporations, bankers.
But the government pays billions of dollars into subsidies to artificially hold the meat and dairy market afloat
No,
in the
they're not. They're paying
if
subsidies to
if the
arable agriculture.
corporations and the government are so in cahoots, wouldn't they just tell the government to stop subsidizing meat and dairy and start subsidizing plant foods more? It seems strange. It
The
seems like a
government,
strange conspiracy to have that the powers that be want us vegan. They could just make us vegan by making meat and dairy way more expensive by not subsidizing it.
that's what they're doing. They're subsidizing industrial agriculture. They're subsidizing.
They're subsidizing. They
Oh,
subsidize
but they do
industrial
not.
ag to make feed for animals, for the animal industry.
You're not letting me speak.
Well, you haven't let me speak this whole time. You've spoke 90% of this conversation has been mostly you.
You
go ahead.
You keep interrupting me.
Go ahead.
Are you not going to interrupt me?
I'm muted.
Good. So, the governments subsidize only industrial agriculture. They subsidize industrial arable agriculture, crops that are grown on our lands, destroying the skin of our planet, destroying the soils, destroying our planet. Arable industrial agriculture, you're interrupting me. Arable industrial agriculture is the major destructive force on our planet, killing our planet, growing plants for all those vegans and vegetarians. Industrial animal husbandry, where animals are locked up in confined animal, in CAFOs, in confined animal factory operations, and fed the grain, the beans, the oily seeds that are overproduced at the expense of the skin of our planet, at the expense of destroying our planet. That is what is subsidized by the governments. But you would never find that the governments in any Western country, anywhere in the world, are subsidizing organic farmers who are doing things properly, or regenerative farmers who are doing.
Did you just say nothing's organic anymore?
Nothing's organic in the supermarket. The only organic things that you can find are when you find a real farmer, you visit the farm, you look that farmer in the eye, and you walk around and you look and you examine and you see what's going on and how it's all done. Only then you can find some marginally good food. But the best food, if you want really true natural food, you have to produce it yourself. That's the position we came to in this world. And that is what I'm doing. And that is what uncountable numbers of my former patients have done. Because when people start using diet as a healing remedy, and they start healing their whole family from all kinds of chronic degenerative conditions, they eventually finish up understanding that in order to have proper food, you have to produce it yourself. Because in our modern, particularly Western world, you simply cannot trust anyone to produce your food. Organic label is a fake. Majority, some 75% of so-called organic chicken in the supermarkets is fake organic. About 90% of all so-called organic grain comes from China into America. You want to trust that grain? And beans and other plant matter. It's grown in the third world countries with the use of enormous amounts of chemicals. And then it's brought into America and other Western countries labeled organic. Organic label in the supermarket is a fake. So vegans who buy the organic produce in the supermarkets are deceiving themselves. You're eating glyphosate on a daily basis.
What does real organic mean to you? Like define organic, if everything else is fake organic?
Real organic is what Mother Nature meant for us. Something that you've grown yourself, or it was grown by people you trust. You know that these people are ethical, they're moral, they're not going to deceive you, and they love this planet, and they're not going to cut any corners. We have, on my farm, we have created soil. We buy horse manure from local stables. We mix it with wood chip or garden waste, and about a year later, that turns into compost. Beautiful, rich compost. So we practice no-dig gardening on my farm. We do not dig because the soil must not be dug. It must not be plowed. It's a living matrix that must not be torn apart and destroyed, disturbed. So what we do, instead of digging in our garden, and there is nothing to dig on my farm anyway to start with because we had no soil, We just pile about a foot of that compost. We make beds out of it. We fill up the paths with wood chip that we walk on, and we plant into that compost. And we have been doing this now for 12 years, and we have about more than a meter now of very beautiful, rich soil. Because compost is not soil, compost is a potential. It's not structured yet. And when you pile it on, and we pile it usually in October, and then we mulch it on top and we leave it over the winter to get structured. So the microbial community in the soil underneath then travels into that compost. Mycorrhiza grows. Remember those fungi that are basis of every microbial community in nature? They grow through that compost, and they create that city with villages and streets and lanes and whatever you have in there. And the bacteria then grow along that fungal network, and viruses and all other creatures. So that compost then gets structured and it becomes soil. That is what soil is. So by springtime, it's all structured and we plant into it, and that's what we do. The same thing happens in the human digestive system and in the human body. All biofilm and all microbial communities are highly structured in the human body and in the body of any animal and anywhere else in nature. That's how nature's been designed. That's how the grand creator created the whole thing. There is a soil inside us, and it is highly structured. It's a microbial community. And the basis of that microbial community are fungi. And none of your science is studying those fungi because they know.
We know about the fungus, trust me.
They know.
I have another question. I was wondering, you cured your son of autism. Did you vaccinate your son, and how did you feed him before he was diagnosed with autism?
Conventionally, like everybody else. I was a conventional doctor. I didn't know any better.
Was he vaccinated? Do you believe in vaccines?
He was vaccinated, yes.
Okay. Is he still on the GAPS diet, and how is he now?
He's a young man who is functioning very well. He's working. He's still slightly damaged, but he works and he earns money and he pays taxes and he is very helpful, and he's a university graduate. He graduated from university, so he's living a normal life. And he started as the most severe case of autism. He was extremely severe.
I noticed that you talk about anti-nutrients a lot. And for my research on anti-nutrients, they're kind of the only thing keeping us from getting cancer. So I wanted to hear your opinion of that.
Anti-nutrients are produced by all plants on our planet because plants can't run away from a predator. They're rooted. So they don't want to be eaten. That's why they put poisonous substances into their leaves and their stems and their fruit, and particularly their seed, because their seeds are their babies. So they don't want their babies eaten. They want them to grow. That is why they equip their babies, their seed, with many, many anti-nutrients, phytates, salicylates, lectins, enzyme inhibitors, all kinds of substances. My cows, I have cows and I have goats on my farm. When the grass goes to seed, they refuse to eat it. They would not eat it because they know that it'll give them a tummy ache. It'll give them joint pains. It'll give them muscle pains because these substances are indigestible, particularly for any animal and particularly for a human digestive system. And they are the major cause of our arthritis epidemic, of fibromyalgia, of connective tissue diseases. Because when they're indigestible, they absorb in undigested state and the immune system reacts to them. And usually these substances then affect the connective tissue of the body. And
can you point to any studies so we can research that?
Hundreds of studies.
Hundreds, huh?
Can
you name one? Can you name one? Or just one school that did a study?
You want me to remember studies?
I remember lots of studies, especially if I'm out teaching people stuff. I definitely would have some studies.
I don't trust science.
Okay, then what? You just trust anecdote and your intuition.
I trust
and your 80s era diet.
I trust my patients. I trust.
Are you sure you aren't just buying, like biasing to your home traditional diet? Because it seems like it's so unusual, and it's been so studied that all of these things are saying, you know, and again, I keep going back as someone who is a doctor, know that you need to be able to discount the information in the study or point out the actual methodology that's incorrect in a study to be able to, you know, actually throw it in the trash. And you're just swiping 90% of the 300 years of science that we have, and you're saying go against it with your most valuable, you know, your children, and your own health. It's just, I'm still just like, I can't, I don't understand how you aren't able to back any of this up with science.
Scientists have tinkered in their laboratories only for a few decades.
Yeah, but they've also figured out a lot of amazing information that has saved billions of people. So you can't really just say that they haven't done anything this whole time, or that everything they've done is garbage. It's a complete logical fallacy. Like, this isn't how we figure out things. This is how we muddle the information we actually have, by bringing in information that is low quality and looking at it as if it's, you know, like again, going back to you're recommending people take fish oil, and fish oils turn, you know, a study just figured out that 90% of fish oil is rank and ineffective by the time it even hits the market. And it's giving people cancer. And like bone broth, like bones absorb heavy metals. When you eat what's in them, you get a bunch of heavy metals. And you don't seem to have any responses to any of these things, because you just want to talk about the microbes in the ground and in the soil, when that's not really, you know, what I'm asking you.
Have you finished talking? Can I
yes,
answer
you can absolutely go
without being interrupted? And
absolutely.
Also, we've been talking now for an hour and a half, so I'll give you another 5 minutes, and that will be enough.
Okay.
Okay. So everything on this planet comes from the Earth crust. And the Earth's crust contains all minerals, all elements present in the universe, including heavy metals, including toxic metals, including all sorts of things. And they're all in balance. But Mother Nature designed it in such a way that we don't get poisoned by these things. Because bodies of all animals, and human body in particular, is equipped with a wonderful system called detoxification system. It's got its headquarters in the liver and departments in every cell. It's a system that protects you from anything harmful in the environment. So every animal has a system like that. Fish have a system like that. Birds have a system like that. Insects have a system like that. Microbes even have the system like that. They're able of doing that. So these heavy metals, they attach shuttles to them. They surround that molecule of mercury or lead or aluminum or anything else with certain enzymes, certain proteins, certain amino acids, certain other things, which renders it benign. And even sometimes the body uses these things, sometimes they're necessary for us. It renders them benign that way. So just to say that cod liver oil contains some heavy metals in it doesn't mean that your body will not handle them correctly. And it doesn't mean that these molecules have not been rendered benign by a certain other molecules attached to them. That is the problem with our science, you see. The human sciences, we live in a technocratic world. And if you don't interrupt me, I can explain to you that there are two worlds in our world. There is the real world created by the grand creator. The galaxies, the sun, the moon, the stars, our planet Earth, our magnificent planet, and all the living creatures that live on it. And that world is beautifully designed and infinitely functional. There is a circle of life in it. The death of one creature becomes the life of another creature. The death of one creature provides habitat and food and resources for all sorts of other life forms. So nothing in this real world goes to waste. Everything's harmonious, and it functions on harmony and balance, the whole thing. Then there is a world called technocratic construct created by humanity. Human beings take resources out of the real world. They take minerals, oil, gas, water, wood, and other resources out of the real world, haul them into their own factories, chop them up, break them down, and make their technocratic things. Their machines, their gadgets, their streets, their houses, cars, airplanes, and whatever. And the technocratic humanity is very proud of their inventions, and it values them above the real world, above nature. But these inventions cannot reproduce. They cannot produce babies. There is no circle of life. And everything goes one way, from the factory to the rubbish tip, to the garbage tip. As soon as you bought your car, it starts rusting, breaking. You have to constantly repair it, constantly deal with it, and eventually it finishes up on the rubbish tip. As soon as you buy a piece of clothing, it turns into rags, eventually it finishes up on the rubbish tip. Our houses, our cities, our streets, everything technocratic humanity creates goes one way, from the resources of nature, from the factory to the rubbish tip. Nothing can reproduce, nothing can heal itself, and there is no circle of life in it. To support the whole technocratic construct, technocratic ideology has been created, technocratic science, technocratic education, technocratic governings, technocratic banks. The whole technocratic construct have been created, and technocratic mentality has been created, and technocratic science at the center of it. Technocratic science is completely materialistic. It denies existence of the grand creator. It denies existence of anything divine in living creatures. It thinks that everything's material. The Darwinism is put as a basis of it, the Darwin theory, despite the fact that Darwin himself was a deeply religious man, and he renounced his theory of evolution in the last years of his life. And the best book that he's ever written, actually, was the research he's done in the last few years of his life, where he researched earthworms. And so he's written a beautiful book on earthworms, where he's demonstrated that earthworms as a major factor in creating the whole life circle on our planet, and it's a key element of nature in us. So the technocratic science, because it denies the most important essence of everything living in this world, and that is the spiritual essence, the divine essence, it can never find the truth. It never will. It's one-legged. It will always be lame, because it is not researching the most important part of everything in the living world. And we need to separate the science and the technologies. The technologies in a technocratic construct, our machines, our gadgets, computers, mobile phones, so on, they're wonderful, they work, and they make our lives comfortable. But when it comes to researching and studying anything living, the science is not worth the paper it's written on, because it's trying to treat life, human beings, animals, birds, our planet, as something dead, as a technology, as a machine, as a piece of metal, or a piece of plastic, or something like that, and apply the same rules and apply the same mathematics and chemistry rules and other rules to that. So from that point of view, technocratic science can never ever get to the truth. In the real world, the science is an endeavor to perceive how the world has been created, how it's been designed, and how it functions. Which means in the real world, they cannot be separate sciences. You cannot separate chemistry from physics and so on. You cannot separate, because everything in the real world is one, and it functions as one. A good example of a technocratic science is technocratic medicine, where they divided human body into many systems. We've got cardiovascular system, we have nervous system, we have connective tissue, we have digestive system, and for every system, we have a speciality. So we have cardiologists, psychiatrists, psychologists, pulmonologists, rheumatologists, and so on and so forth. There's a caboodle. And all of these professions try to treat the human body without consulting with anybody else, prescribing their own medicines. They're just dealing with their particular organ. But human body functions as one. It is a one entity. It cannot be divided into bits and pieces. Many medical disasters are created by one specialty trying to treat their particular organ without any idea what they're doing to other organs in the body. For example, large percent of strokes. I'm a neurologist by training, and I worked as a neurologist many years before I had my family. Large percent of strokes in people are caused by cardiologists prescribing medications to treat the heart, and what they do, they cause a stroke in the person because they break all the mechanisms that the body is using to compensate, so the brain is properly provided. So that's what the technocratic science is. The very basis that it stands on is faulty. It's lame. It's standing on one leg. That is why it's never, ever will get to the truth. Only in the real world can the truth exist. We now have many people who are starting to understand this in our world. And these are the people who get a piece of land, get close to nature, start producing their own food, use as little technocracy as possible, and protect their children from technocracy. Many technocratic parents are using gadgets, laptops, and iPads and whatever as babysitters nowadays because they keep the child quiet. And as a result, children are damaged on every level by these gadgets. They create technocrats. They turn these children into little technocrats. They can't even play. They don't know how to play, these children. They don't know, they're not interested in this world because the technocratic gadget and whatever their heads are filled with by corporations who created entertainment on those gadgets. They are designed specifically to make them addictive. So dopamine is produced and other neurotransmitters are produced while the child is staring at this thing. So children learn to live in this technocratic construct, in this artificial world on the screen. So the real world is not interesting for them. They don't want to engage in it. They don't know how to play. They don't talk, these children, to each other. They're technocrats. The more technocratic a human being becomes, the more this human being degenerates on every level, on mental level, physical level, and spiritual level. We live in a technocratic humanity which is full of degenerates, and with every generation, they degenerate more, these people. But many people are breaking out of that now and moving into the real world. They protect their children from technocracy. They ban all gadgets. Children grow in nature. They play with each other. They look at each other. They're involved in cooking. They have discussions. It's a very different world. And that's what we need to do. Humanity, if it wants to have any future at all, needs to move out of the technocratic construct and into the real world. It'll take generations for us to do that, to return back to the grand creator.
All right. Thank you for that. Just my last question. Is the GAPS diet a plant-free diet?
Not at all. We have a whole spectrum of GAPS diet. The more the day, as I've said about several times now to you, the more the digestive system is damaged, the less plant matter that person can tolerate. As the person starts recovering, so the extreme part of the extreme end of the GAPS diet is the no plant diet. And I was telling you that story about the babies with FPIs. Once I've designed that diet for those babies, and we got fantastic results with it, and now a lot of these children in the world are following that particular diet and they're recovering beautifully. I then applied that diet to ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease, schizophrenia, other severe mental illnesses, cancer in people, and all of those people get fantastic results. But as their digestive system starts healing and getting better, they start introducing plant matter, they start eating more and more plants, and at a certain point, when people start coming off the GAPS diet, because once you've healed, you can come off the GAPS diet. You don't have to be on it for life, if it's possible for you to heal. And there is then a proportion of people in the world who need more carbohydrates. So we have a variety of the GAPS diet, which is called more plant GAPS diet, from no plant to more plant. So these people eat more plants because their constitution requires for them to eat a little bit more plant matter. But they still, the bulk of they continue eating their animal foods, because only animal foods truly feed and build the human body and sustain the physical structure you're living in.
All right. You want to shout out your website?
My website is called gaps.me, gaps.me. There is a blog there. We have GAPS training where we train practitioners and coaches. These are specialists who are trained how to implement the GAPS nutritional protocol. We have thousands of them around the world. My books have been translated into more than 27 languages all over the world. So GAPS is a global phenomenon. And at the moment, I'm writing a new book on farming, where I will explain everything we've learned on the farm. And it's a book specifically for people who are wannabe farmers from a city. Because when we started, we didn't know the first thing about how to produce your own food. And the farm has taught us an awful lot. So in this book, I will describe how to start, where to start, how to look after chickens and birds and animals and gardens, how to create soil, how to do no-dig gardening, and all of these other things. So that book is maybe 3/4 done now. So hopefully it will come out soon.
Well, thank you, Dr. Natasha. For me, one of the core principles of natural law is the idea that theft is bad, and stealing the life of a sentient being just because it helps you in some way is not in line with natural law. And I just wanted to end on that. Thank you for coming.
I can answer that question if you would like me to answer that question.
It's not a question.
Let me answer this question, because I know that you've just repeated the words of Mark Passio. These are not your words. These are not your thoughts. You've taken them from Mark Passio. And Mark Passio right now is as I understand, is also have been following the vegan protocol for a long time. I have a chapter.
Principled.
That's right. I have a chapter in my new book, farming book, where I'll explain specifically addressing this particular point. If you look at the natural real world that the grand creator has created, not the human technocratic little construct, which has no truth in it, and it's heading for its self-destruction, because that's
appealing to nature is a fallacy. Just because something happened in the past or you perceive it as natural does not mean it is right or the correct way.
You're repeating somebody else's words again.
No, I'm repeating.
Let me explain to you. The real world has been created by a grand creator. It has been created by a colossal power, and it's infinitely wise and infinitely clever. And if you look at this world, you will realize that everything eats everything in this world. You know, a cat ate a bird.
That's not the law of correspondence. That's not as above, so below. You've misconstrued the law of correspondence for the food chain, which is a big fallacy.
You're interrupting me again. If you want an answer to a question, please don't interrupt. Okay?
I didn't ask you for an answer. You kind of forced it.
You've raised a very important issue that many vegans are confused on, and it's important to explain this to them.
Okay, go ahead.
You are confused on that issue yourself. It is important for you to clarify that issue for yourself. So please listen if you would like to clarify that in your mind. Right? Everything eats everything in this world. Animals eat, kill, birds kill, microbes kill, plants kill. We now have research showing that plants are carnivorous. The best food, if you ask any gardener, the gardener will tell you the best feed for the plants in their garden is blood, fish meal, meat, and meaty water. Plants are carnivorous. There is nothing vegetarian or vegan in the grand creation, in the real world. Everything kills for food. And the imperative word is for food. Animals only kill for food, not for fun, not for sport. This is entirely human.
Cats kill for fun all the time. They're obligate carnivores.
No, cats don't kill for fun.
You just
they only kill for food. All animals and all creatures in this world kill only for food. And what is the right thing when you come as a guest to someone's house?
Humans don't kill other humans for food. If you're looking at the grand scheme of things, we're just animals.
If you are in the freedom movement, you should know that they do. Very much so.
For food?
Yes, they do. Very
Humans
much so.
Are eating each other in the streets?
Not on the streets, but in the elites, they do all the time. And you know that?
I'm talking about the majority of the population. That's what we're talking about here.
And cannibalism has been known in humanity for a very long time.
Okay, but that doesn't make it right. You're appealing to nature again. You're appealing to the past, saying that because something happened in the past, that it's good now.
It's happening now.
That's a fallacy.
It is happening now. If you would stop interrupting me, I will continue explaining to you. So
I didn't never interrupt you for 2 hours straight.
everything in the real world kills for food. Animals
But it
kill,
doesn't have to.
birds
And
kill.
we as humans are above
Yes,
those
they touch.
animals, and we
Yes,
definitely
they touch.
don't need to lower ourselves to that kind of animalistic behavior, which is definitely below us.
I wouldn't be so high and mighty looking down at animals. They're infinitely
Oh, that's
more
not what I'm doing.
They are much
But
wiser.
I can be morally superior to them and not kill my neighbor for food because I don't have to, because I have stored.
Nobody's suggesting that you should kill your neighbor. Let me finish. Let me explain
Comparing us
this.
to animals and saying because animals kill that we should kill.
We human beings come into this world. We are born into here. We live a life, and then we die. We leave this world. We are guests in this world. We come only for a very short time. Human life is quite short. And
we should do as little harm here while we are here in that little time as possible. Thank you, Dr. Natasha Campbell-McBride. I had a great time. Good luck with your journeys and your books. We'll see you next time. Oh my God. So no, Cav. Just because you think eating a certain way is healthier for you, it is most definitely not against natural law to be vegan. Taking an animal's life because you think it's healthier for you is not in alignment with natural law, you absolute dill hole. Anyway, that was interesting. I didn't really get through anything I wanted to get through, at least epidemiologically wise. I need to hit the head real quick. Allie, take over for a second.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Let's bring Darren and Alicia on. Oh my gosh. Hi. Thanks for waiting to come on. Yeah, that was like, I was hoping we were going to be able to dive into the nutrition aspects, the nitty gritty of nutrition a little bit more. I know we did a lot of research for this. And there was a lot of studies and stuff about gut microbiome and lots of good stuff, short chain fatty acids and what bacteria produce all of that. And I wanted to hear what you had to say, but I guess you sort of responded to it by saying that bacteria don't matter and it's all about fungi. So there's lots to go off of here that I'm sure we'll be doing lots of videos. I know there's definitely, that inspired me to put out a lot of content regarding nutrition and responding to that. But yeah, what did you guys think about that?
Wow.
I know, I'm like a little overwhelmed.
I feel like I thought this was supposed to be a dual discourse, and that wasn't. It was a diatribe. I mean, that's not what I signed up for to watch, you know? And
yo, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, dude. I would fry this lady like a pound of her precious bacon. Like, I would have loved to ask her medical questions, but
Woo-wee. Holy shit.
Honestly, you had the patience of a saint, and if anything, you didn't interrupt. If anyone was showing anger and a lack of patience and a lack of stability in the body and emotions, it was her. I mean, the first diatribe went 45 plus minutes, and you didn't even take a sip. She was sipping her milk throughout.
Yeah, the milk sips. Well, and it was supposed to be an interview, so I thought, okay, like she was going to speak and then she would sort of pause and allow Jeffrey to ask a question. We had lots of questions, like I was just saying. I was hoping we were going to get
a whole
to,
list
but
of stuff I wasn't even able to get.
She powered through and gave her spiel and really she sells her books, and I understand that. We listened to some previous interviews, and it was kind of, she just repeated the same the same thing that she always says in the interview. So that was unfortunate. Yeah.
It is, because I think the point of these opportunities is one can be in one silo, and it's such a great chance to hear what the other one, what are your sources of data? What are you basing your insights or conclusions or protocols on? And at the first time, we have hundreds of thousands of children, and yet there was no, I'm a data person. Let me see the data. And it's in the book. Well, that's a biased thing. I agree with that. Where is this supported by someone else? And this is the meat industry, for goodness sake. It is funded, if not by governments, by everybody. So I'm very baffled by it. It just felt like she looked very afraid. And to not give you an opportunity to ask a question when you asked a question. And this is just my immediate
answer
reaction.
any of the questions I even asked.
It was avoided. And then you were seen as, so you were like scolded like a school child in Little House on the Prairie. And like,
he's exactly the kind of person who would drug Jeffrey for asking questions in school.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Let
others speak. I'm going to mute for a second, but that's my initial is I just think it was an absolute missed opportunity on her part to truly answer what vegan questions are, and like, what is your source of data? Let's see what that is. Oh, great. Instead, it was a foie gras feeding of the duck down the throat and held captive without even requesting. Is the audience okay? I would like to share as an educator.
I've never had to talk fight like that. Like, she literally kept talking over me and we kept pushing back and forth until she finally stopped. It's like, geez, lady, like, you just went for an hour straight. I didn't say a word. No. And then now I have to stop interrupting and give her more time.
I don't.
And then like when I try and ask a simple question, she's just talking over me, trying to like, she wasn't going to give me a chance to say anything. She was going to try and go the whole hour without ever letting me say anything.
She was
that must have been her tactic, but
she agreed to come on to have a dual dialogue and didn't provide the space for that.
I wasn't even going to let her do her spiel because I've seen there's 500 videos of her doing her spiel. I don't need to hear. I know all that she I know what she's saying. I don't need her to regurgitate it on my show. We've all heard all these arguments 10,000 times by idiots that learned it from her.
You know why she doesn't want you to interrupt? Because she memorized the script and she went through it, and she can't wing it because she doesn't have any of the tools at her disposal, like logic, rhetoric, and grammar. This is all rehearsed tomfoolery, and that's why she needs to speak from a script, like a salesperson. I used to be in sales, and not freaking amateur sales, mortgage sales, where I make $4,000 off of one deal. But you know what? You got to build rapport. When you have this person with a $900,000 house, you don't just cold call somebody and get their social security number and a full application by being an idiot. You listen to people. You let them talk your ear off for 2 hours because it doesn't matter. If they're talking my ear off for 2 hours, they like me. But why do they like me? It's not because I was being fake. It's because I was being real. And I had an answer for every single question they asked, and I didn't have to Google it or look on the script. And they would ask me, how's the weather where you're at? And then they would ask me how old I am and what my dog's name is. And then a mortgage question, a financial question. I'd answer it in an erudite manner, because I know the material.
She does not want me to go down the gut health alley.
She doesn't trust
in any way whatsoever want to talk about gut health with me because she knows that's where she's fucking lying, and she knows she's never talked to anyone like me before, so she had no way of responding to any of my questions. She's never been criticized.
And that
goes on interviews with people stroking her off.
Yeah, she trusts her patients who are not scientists, who are actually sick people. And I understand that results are one thing.
Well, but she wrote a book. She also writing a study.
It's mentalism, bro. You can convince anybody they feel good. That's how mind control works.
She also talks down too. I noticed that she likes to talk down to try to belittle the person she's tackling to hardcore.
I knew she was going to be like that.
European style.
You need to tell me you are feeling good, or I will not speak to you.
You don't tell me that my Soviet Union degree is wrong.
And all of a sudden, she doesn't promote bone broth? She's the bone broth lady.
I know.
May I address the gut for a nanosecond? And this is like evidential thing here. 5 months ago, I had a chronic cough, which is an esophageal GERD acid reflux cough caused by crap going on in the gut and it coming back up and what I was eating. But like, and the doctor gave me a prescription of some crap that it doesn't matter. And I looked at him and I went home and I went, I'm going to go juicing. And it went away and the gut's good. And
I was just going to say that. I was like, I noticed when I started adding a shit, like literally dumping sugar into my system, like it was poison, my acid refluxes and all my weird backups and my like all of that just disappeared. It's as if the more carbohydrate you add to your body, the healthier you are.
One thing just before I forget. So the guy Cav who said that veganism is against natural law, this dude goes on and on about how we have to use the scientific method for everything. And all these message boards, he's just talking about scientific method. Yet he gave me that lady as his reference for how he feeds his children.
God,
and this is the scientific method guy. His lady just said she's all, I don't believe in science. She just said that to me. And this guy,
and they
Cav,
think that we are animals. They're so satanic. They think we're fucking animals, dude. Don't you realize the point of being a human being is to subjugate the animal with the divine nature? What a fucking clown shoe.
The
fucking food chain. She pulled the food chain. She knows Mark's work, but doesn't understand laws of
her fucking loser followers are the ones that post shit like, Mark, if you have a cold, you got to eat some fucking meat and eggs. You know, these are the fuckers that like follow him and like, do they have all this free time to volunteer or who's bankrolling it? Maybe she's subsidizing the fucking meat tards with some of her book proceeds.
New age bullshit.
I think I just learned, like that whole concept of that lady, like everything she fucking said, like people listen to her.
Bro, Will's funnel conference fanboys listen to her and basically like put her children on their diet. She's basically their guru for food.
You know what I think it is? I think it's that, she pads everything. She starts talking about all these problems that people agree with, and it makes her sound smarter, but she's never actually talking about her diet. When she started going on that tirade about technocratic, whatever,
no, she was completely diverted.
And I was just like letting the ads run. I was like, I know she's going to still be talking at the end of this ad. And of course,
she used one Mark Passio talking point. One more.
I don't want to be the dick to point this out either, but there was like a whole thing that most people know between scientists and doctors that happened in Russia during the 80s, where they were basically pushing these people through programs that were not qualified to get into the position they are. And I think she's one of them. I think because she got her degree in like 86 or something. I don't think she knows what the fuck she's actually talking about.
Russia. She was probably the doctor who told them if nobody holds the babies, the kids will be quiet.
Christian, you don't think that this lady knows what she's talking about? I don't have to know where she got her freaking doctorate from to know she doesn't know what she's talking about. Holy crap.
Jeffrey, please don't interrupt him. Please don't.
I know.
If you just let me speak, you would hear me and understand my answer. You just have to stop interrupting me.
I like when at the end you were trying to wrap it and she just wanted to keep going.
Well, that's you want me to answer that question? And I'm all, no, I don't want you to answer that. I didn't ask a question.
Wasn't a question.
It wasn't a question, lady. It was a statement. A statement of fact. It wasn't up for debate. And then she's all, oh, you want me to? Then she brought it up again. She's all, oh, if you want me to answer this, you'll be quiet. And I'm all, I didn't ask you to answer this. Bye-bye. Like, I don't need any, like, I've had my fill of bullshit for the day, lady. You fucking topped it off and it's only 1 o'clock. Like,
and then she tries to say humans do eat humans. And it's like, well, that would be the elite occult stuff.
What is your point? What
Which
really
that would make it right. By her logic, that would be normal then.
Yeah, exactly. And then I forget what it was, Jeffrey. You were asking her to provide, I mean, multiple times, what is the evidence, peer-reviewed clinical studies? Then she said, there's hundreds of studies. Okay, name one. No, you want me to remember studies? Yes.
If you're a doctor,
you should be remembering some studies. And then, oh, but then the studies don't matter and they're all corrupt. So it's like circular thinking to serve her own bias. And it's just really, really shocking.
But eat organic. Organic is fake, but eat organic. Sorry.
And I don't remember studies, but if I was going to be coming to a debate, I would bone up on some studies to, you know, because I would know that they would be asked for during the debate.
Yeah, especially when you're trying
I don't
to
even think she wrote the script, guys. I think somebody else made her memorize it, like Karl Marx had to memorize the communist bullshit.
If you watch her other interviews, it is the same script. She said so many things. We watched at least, what, 3, 4, 5 different interviews before this, we did this live. And there were multiple things she said where it was literally word by word, the same thing. So whether, I don't know if it's just or her own stuff that she wrote, but it is the same things being repeated, which, okay, that's fine. But then you need to be able to engage in the conversation and answer the questions, right? So again, like, okay, what studies? Oh, hundreds of studies, but no, I can't name one. You want me to remember the studies?
So
like, you wrote a book, you should remember.
Yeah, coming out of the rest of the world then and going into her book, third one coming, how many people were included in her one-sided study within her book?
So I just brought that up. So it was the study, it was on 8 people they looked at. Let me see here. Let me bring up. And so she was listed. There was all these authors, and it was funny. She's listed last in the author just to try and like kind of push it down.
Here it
is. So the GAPS nutritional protocol as a dietary treatment. So there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 authors before her, and then her. So, and again, it's an analysis of 8 case studies, which 8 people who are just on the GAPS protocol. So no control studies, no people on a different diet.
Right, as a measure. Yeah.
Yeah.
How did we get her on the show? That I'm curious. How did you get that?
This dipshit Cav was in like a natural law group, just screaming at everyone that veganism goes against natural law. And I was all, just super nicely. I'm like, hey, bro, would you like to come on my podcast and talk about that? And he's like, I have someone better. And so he sent me her, and I looked her up, and I was all, fuck yeah. So I immediately sent her an email.
The bone doctor.
Hey, my friend Cav sent me your direction. You know, like, I'm really interested in this ADHD autism stuff with diet. You know, come on my show. And she's all, sure. You know, it's another Joey Schwartz.
I must say, so first,
that's crazy.
To have Dr. Peter Rogers on. He wanted to have another doctor on to respond to her, doctor on doctor, right?
Yeah.
And she said no, she did not want to debate. She wanted to do an interview with Jeffrey. So that's kind of revealing in itself. I mean, wouldn't you want to have another doctor to rigorously interview or debate you in order to prove how correct your findings are? I would think
Peter Rogers would have been amazing.
By the way, I asked him. I sent Peter Rogers a message. Peter Rogers, MD, Stanford, Harvard doctor, practicing medical doctor. I said, hey, Peter, what do you think about this GAPS diet? I'm debating this lady. And he says, I looked up GAPS diet. It's ridiculous. Lots of meat and oil equals both are bad for the gut lining. Both increase risk of leaky gut and all the complications of that, like inflammatory bowel disease, IBS, autoimmune disease, neuroinflammation, etc. Then sells lots of supplements. E.g., instead of saying eat plant foods and fiber, she says buy probiotic supplements, which I never got to asking her about because she talks so much. But she tells people to eat fish oil and probiotic supplements on top of her diet. So it's like, lady, How is this
So she just full
natural?
blown admits. Yeah, she's admitting that her diet's not a complete
She
diet.
did not want to talk about her diet or the gut or anything she wanted to know with me. She knew I was going to jump all over her on
I'm
that.
gonna be honest, Jeff. I mean, it was pretty clear. She could have told you if you would have just stopped interrupting her.
I know.
She needed to talk for
Oh
another
my God.
hour, then we would have all got it through our heads. She needed one more hour.
Well, when she first came on, she's all, "How long are we
1
going to
to
go?"
3.
And I'm all, "I'd like to go at least an hour. You know, I won't hold you for 2." And she's all, "Well, I like talking." And I'm like, "All right, let's do it then." You know, I'll go
Okay,
for 4
fuck it.
hours then. You know, but obviously she ran away at an hour and a half. So, you know,
Well, it's funny once it started getting really tough. Once you started interrupting, then she noticed that we went over an hour, and she's like, "Actually, it's been an hour and a half, so I gotta go." It's like, okay, well,
Pull
how
the
convenient
Padini.
now.
pull the
Yeah, but then
Padini.
she wouldn't leave when you tried to end it. And she wouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
No,
she
I
knew.
seriously thought she had a Justin Padini degree. Like that's what I was like. Is this a fucking joke? I had to Google her quick. Like halfway through the podcast, I had to
huge,
Google her
dude.
to make sure it was real. Oh, crazy.
Demon, straight up demon, lying to people
yeah.
about their health, telling people to poison their fucking children. Whoa.
Oh, so another.
I love
funny
the vaccine question. That was gold. The vaccine question. Did you vaccinate your children? Oh yeah, of course. Your autistic kid.
Yeah.
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 That was good. That was good.
So we were looking at this. Actually, I think Brax Hyperlink showed this to us. It was a Reddit thread on a carnivore subreddit talking about her. And so these carnivore people are actually, they don't like her because she promotes so many plants in her protocol. What they brought up, so they brought up an archive, a web archive, so an old copy of her GAPS website. And so the old protocol included juicing. And it said juicing from plants is a way to bioaccumulate high amounts of plant nutrients. And so she's since scrubbed that. So what I'm realizing is that she's remarketed herself. So since the carnivore craze has gotten so popular, she's realizing, oh, wait, I need to talk down. I need to poo-poo all the plants and all these interviews. I need to take the juicing out, and I kind of keep the plant recommendations on the DL in order to cater and market towards the carnivore crowd and sell the books, right? But then the real carnivore people look into the protocols and they can see, wait a minute, the whole idea in the GAPS protocol is to get back and incorporate as many plants and vegetables as possible and include fermented foods and the probiotics and all these things, which seem to be making up for the lack of plants in the diet. So it's all very contradictory, but just, I thought that was funny where she definitely had a remarketing of herself and her protocols to try and cater to the carnivore crowd. Cause that's what's selling. That's what's popular now in the past 5-10 years or so.
Well, that's what she said. She's added a no plant section to her diet. So she's accommodated now that it's popular.
Cha-ching!
But what's in bone
she's
broth?
trying to, but she's mentioning plants to you because she knows you're vegan and her whole goal is to sell books.
No, she knows I know that you have to have plants to have gut health. So she was trying to, every time I brought up, she steered super clear. She only said the word gut once. And normally she's saying the gut all the time. And like, I had questions like, what's the how mechanically is this bone broth fixing your stomach, and how, and what science are you using to back this? And we couldn't even get to that question because she wasn't even like listening.
She was afraid. It was so obvious she was afraid. And that's not a fair discussion, and that doesn't go well for that stance. Like, it's just, if you really stand by it, show the data, have a balanced conversation without being a control freak, which is what she was. And it's not okay. By the way, what's in bone broth? To make bone broth, you put vegetables and stuff. You don't just have the bones brewed. It's full of vegetables, which also give, so how do you separate, if you go down to the science of just frickin' bone broth?
And can we get to the definition of what fasting is? She was saying veganism is fasting.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I don't. Yeah, that didn't make any sense. I mean, John literally never stops eating. Like all day, every day. That's all John does is fucking eat, eat, all fucking day.
And isn't
Lucky
fasting?
him.
I mean, you're abstaining from calories of some sort. We obtain calories from plants. I mean, even if you say they have anti-nutrients, you're still obtaining calories. So how is that a fast?
You didn't read her book. You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's the problem. I just keep interrupting.
It was just a missed
was also
opportunity
good.
on her part. It just didn't land well.
No,
was
she's
a
got
good
nothing.
moment.
If she budges on anything, she's got nothing. Back to the Joey Schwartz syndrome again, where I went to Joey Schwartz and debated the guy, and I'm like, dude, you're not promoting carnivore diet. You're saying that you can eat all this other stuff. And I'm like, and he's like, oh, well, I don't care. I'm just keeping it. And I'm like, yeah, you're keeping it because you know if you changed your name from carnivore to omnivore camaraderie, that you'd lose 90% of your fucking people. And he eventually lost half of his following because he's full of shit. And it's like,
The mic is off. The mic is.
yeah, there.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
She's doing hundreds of video interviews lying to people about pseudoscience health stuff. And I've been watching these videos. It's all these woke moms, these like based moms that are like, like the lady I interviewed, I debated the other day, like, oh, I have my pigs and my chickens that I kill and I don't fucking care. And, it's like those kind of types where it's like, okay, you think you have to eat animals or else you can't have muscles, and that's all you're running on. I straight up told that lady, I was like, sure, if you want to be vain and an asshole, you can do that, but it's like all these ladies that are just all, oh, carnivore, and that's all they do. And you see their children in the background, you're just like, oh God, these poor kids. And that they're like videos where they're like, oh, my son's been trying to eat more fruit and I got to keep it from him. And it's like an infant. It's like the baby.
What?
Oh, I know what's best for my child. She shouldn't be getting all the sugar in the fruit. So I just feed my kid meat all day. Like, I can't, like I told the lady, as a father, that just twists my brain. Like, it makes me want to fucking cry when I see this shit. Like, you can't believe these people have been brainwashed enough to do this shit to their kids. Like, whatever, do it to yourself. Like, fucking whatever. Do it to yourself. Don't do it to your kid. Like, let them deal with it later on in life in their own way that they want to. Don't confine. And that's the whole thing about this diet and the carnivore diet and keto. It's a dangerous band-aid. It's using meat to fix a meat problem, and you're cutting off the latter years of your life in order to have some abs. Like, are you out of your mind? And that lady, when I started talking to the lady the other day, I debated, the second, 5 minutes in, she's like, I gotta go. I gotta get out of here. I don't want to be hearing any of this. This guy's making way too much fucking sense.
Oof.
You don't have to kill you don't have to kill all your farm animals to get abs, lady. You can just be nice to them and love them and care for them and not kill them for your abs because you want your raw cottage cheese. And it's just unbelievable.
You know what gets you abs faster than whey protein or anything like that? Sugar. Sugar gets you shredded.
Yeah, sugar. That's what I told that lady.
Well,
She's never had anyone tell her that before. Oh no, I don't think I had enough sugar when I was a hyperactive kid. My brain shut down because you took my natural source from me.
It was not enough animal fat. You needed the animal
needed more fats.
More hyperactivity is actually stimming. It's stimming. You're trying to stimulate your own receptors. So you're right.
Unbelievable.
I really liked. Thank you for asking her what organic means to her because she didn't know what it was.
No.
Yes, that was good.
It's what
she was clueless.
Yeah, natural.
Which is natural, comes out of the soil. That's what you should eat, is only natural, organic. That's all you eat, but nothing's organic anymore. But you need to eat organic.
just because we did something in the past doesn't mean that it's good to do now. We've been at war for 300 years. Should we continue it because we were at war? Like, that's a logical fallacy. Oh, you're just repeating something someone said to you. No, that's a thought I had in my head that is completely relevant to this fucking situation. Trying to talk down on me. She's got teacher
for 90%
vibes.
of
Like,
for 90% of human history, like, women didn't have the right to talk. Should we go back to that?
Yeah, but that's nature. Nature is how things were done in the past.
Yeah, women are naturally weaker.
She said it was, as long as your friends are doing it, then it's organic. It has to be someone you trust, and it has to be your neighbor, your friends. So people that are neighbors to factory farms, that's organic, as long as that's your neighbor.
The big fallacy with that is in these factory farms, you'll have better conditions because you have a board member wanting to make money holding that place accountable, where you got
holding a standard.
these truthers that go off and do like this off-grid prepper thing. These fucking degenerates are out there with these animals, probably not feeding them right, probably not fucking tending to their shit correctly. That's where really fucked up shit can happen on a small farm. It's not.
Yeah, there's a documentary about that. What's it called? The Colony or whatever, which is about a group of people who go down to like a chunk of land and try to like live on free land, but like they're fucking idiots. They're trying to like farm animals. They're just trying to repeat the same problems. Yeah, just psychopaths.
Yeah, it's like just because if you're doing it in moral behavior, it doesn't matter the scale, whether it's on a small scale or large scale. It's still an immoral behavior. It still causes pain and suffering just because it's done organic, like you said, Jeremy. Like, it's your neighbor doing it and it's organic, so therefore
it's okay.
The pain and suffering caused by the animal is okay because it's your neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
Such BS. I really wanted to show her this because she seems to think that we've had fucking animal cultivation for millions of years. She thinks we've been holding animals, but
she says we've evolved alongside of we evolved to eat cows.
Yeah. And that we used to hunt and all this stuff. And this article is hilarious because it's an ultra runner who every year for the past 12 years has tried to chase down an elk with a bow and arrow to bag one. And he hasn't been able to do it. And he's a world famous ultra runner who's like can run more than any human, probably average human, can, far beyond, average capabilities.
If anyone could do it,
it would be him.
Like that.
Yeah. And somehow he can't do it. He can't get a single one. He can't get within arrow throw of it. It's because, our media seems to show arrows. Arrows are like missiles, heat-seeking missiles that you could shoot a deer from 5,000 yards away like Legolas. It's bullshit. If you've ever shot a bow and arrow, it's practically useless. It's unbelievably practically useless. So these carnists get these ideas of like, oh, if I was out hunting, me and my boys with the bow and arrows, we'd be able to actually catch anything, especially being like having the diet that they eat now. It's like pretty funny. These dudes are completely, it's mythology. And she started off with, oh, I'm a regenerative farmer. That's hilarious. So cows destroyed my field, so I'm gonna add more cows. Oh, okay, that makes fucking sense. Holy shit. So
that made all the sense.
Irresponsible farming farming practices for the last 200 years. That we should just triple that. Let's just do way more than they were doing. Let's continue these irresponsible practices, but turn them up to the 10th level. These carnists think there is a carnist solution for carnist problems. That's what this lady with her bullshit diet is trying to use meat to fix a problem meat gave to you. I showed her a meta study, the highest caliber information we have about a recent study that found leaky gut, which she says causes autism and ADHD and all this stuff. Leaky gut comes from animal bacteria of animal decomposing in the stomachs of humans. and she completely ignored it and said to do more animal fat, because like, and then Peter Rogers did a recent video about how leaky gut causes stupidity. So no wonder we have all these clowns saying this satanic, illogical disinformation and not caring that they're lying to people about their health. No wonder these people all have leaky gut. They're all lipemic, lipidosis, where their brain is clogged with fat. And it just simply doesn't work anymore. It's the brain fog that they all say they lose with vegan when they go vegan or when they go carnivore. It's the brain fog that they're all talking about. It's the ridiculous display this lady just gave us this whole time, where she was so self-important she didn't even think to allow me to talk. I literally had to butt in and fight with her, to fight with words to get to ask her a simple question, and she just ignored the questions and talked down on me like I was a school child who had no idea what he was talking about. But I don't think she's ever had a conversation with anyone. I think she's only had, stayed with her yes people that all just think she's amazing. And then I think Cav was like, oh, this fucking vegan retard, you should be able to totally fucking, destroy this guy. And it's Dunning-Kruger effect. These people get around their yes men, their social circles, and it makes them stupid. It completely stops their brain from working. They don't want to have to use it anymore, because they could just say anything and everyone believes them around them because they're kissing their ass. But then they get in front of someone like me who cares about this type of thing far more than they do care about their bullshit. And they don't know what to do because they're all, like Bracky called it. The second I sounded hostile in the least bit, she did a full pivot in her chair. She's like, fuck. And then she just ignored everything I said from that point on and just tried to talk down on me like I was being aggressive when I let her talk for 57 minutes straight without interrupting her.
If anyone was disrespectful, it was her. She had no control over her emotions. She didn't share the stage. She spoke down to you. She cut you off repeatedly. And yet she didn't even do you the goodness of answering your questions. She avoided everything. It was a diatribe. I mean, in fairness, again, people were here, open to listening. She didn't give anything to listen to other than a preach sermon.
Yeah, she
wasn't about that, dude. Yeah, I was gonna say she just wanted to control the room. That's what I got out of the whole thing. Is she was just in full position of trying to control the conversation.
So you could find, basically, if anybody wants to know about healing your gut, plant-based, there's this low FODMAP diet. Pretty interesting. Look into it. It's basically what that lady hijacked and took. She basically took the low FODMAP diet, but then took out all the vegetables and legumes and beans and all the stuff and replaced it with her bone stock or whatever. I haven't found anything of hers that she actually originated, because she didn't. The GAPS diet is just a knockoff of some other, what is it, perfect carb.
Well, I think she admitted it too, that she didn't. Yeah. She's never published anything too, didn't she? She said, "Well, no, I know what those cost money in."
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So somebody donates the money to get these fake studies done, and then, then they publish
like $3,000 to $5,000. So it's not that much money, but it's not cheap.
Yeah, sometimes if you're like a real criminal, you can pay some grad students to put some bullshit together, and then you send them to Columbia University, and then they do stuff like that. But that's usually when you're like an actual Rockefeller criminal, and they have to use like a higher degree of actual scientism.
So I got two studies up here that show that vegans have 30% more glycine than even vegetarians. And this is like one of the most important things to healing your gut are the small chain fatty acids and the amino acids, short chain, not small chain. but it's all very known science. There's nothing they're not trying to figure this out. It's been figured out. And animal products most definitely destroy your gut. They cause your gut they cause stuff to not digest in your stomach and go into your colon and be digesting down there. And they're finding chicken feces in the chicken meat, in the bone broth and stuff that is causing like gnarly cancers in these people's bowels from eating this crap.
Type of bacteria that is found in chicken feces are obtained from the animal products.
Is that because of the chicken feet and then they've not been washed that there's chicken feet? The bacteria comes from
what they eat.
It's being fed the
chickens end up with their shit in their mouth and eat in their stomach. Yeah, I read the whole fucking thing.
Well, the animals feed the bad bacteria, which is found in chicken feces.
Yeah,
like it's the same bacteria that's in the chicken feces.
That's got to cause an inflammatory response.
Of course.
Absolutely, yeah.
And like all these. They're like, oh, I cured my son's eczema. That's because you went on, when you put your son, a child, on the low carb diet, you're shutting down their immune response. The eczema went away. It wasn't cured. Your body's response to whatever caused the eczema has been subdued because your body doesn't have enough energy to run the cells to fix all this stuff. These people. Like, and what I told the lady earlier, you're subduing your son's symptoms by cutting off his immune response so that he behaves better and it's easier for you to deal with him. You're not feeding him a diet that is helping him long term, like and is like actually fixing the problem. You're putting a dirty Band-Aid on the problem. But by doing this keto carnivore, I'm gonna take it down to just meat products. And like, these people don't understand that's disordered eating. It's an eating disorder, unlike anorexia, dissimilar to anorexia. I call I got all these obese guys on my Facebook page that are on carnivore right now, and they've lost 20 pounds, so they think it's the greatest thing in the world. And I tell them, I know, I tell them anorexic, and they don't know what to think. They're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, you think you're ordered eating, your eating is ordered right now when you only eat meat? Like, you're starving yourself. Oh, I lost weight. Yeah, but you can lose weight with meth. You're starving yourself. Like, you're hurting yourself long term to have abs. You don't even.
I've made the argument that meth heads are healthier than most meat eaters.
Yeah.
All that fasting.
Yeah. So I just, it's an inversion of truth. It's definitely not in line with natural law. And this lady is nothing science. There's no science behind anything this lady is saying. So for Cav to be talking about the scientific method all day and the trivium just is the hugest hypocrisy I could even understand. And the fact that he's doing this to his forcing this on his child fucking disgusts me.
He's morally consistent in that they kicked me out of the group for politely contradicting him. I didn't go inappropriate at all. And they kicked me out of the group simply for contradicting Cav about his little violence diet. And then now I can see where they get it from, because here's the deal. Like, you have a kid, maybe he's allergic to the fabric softener, and he's whining and he's itching his arm because of his eczema. And then they tell the kid to sit down and be quiet so they can watch their stupid doctor talk. And then they say he's ADHD and he's whiny and he has eczema. So they switch him to a brain-killing murder diet, kind of like giving him a Thorazine shot, but not by addition of toxins, but by suppression of his neocortex due to a nutritional deficiency. And then he goes into ketosis. His immune system goes down. He feels good because he has excess endogenous phenylalanine in his system, which is a natural ketone that's addictive. That's why they add it to Diet Coke. Phenylketonuria, ketones in the urine. That's what that is. And so they drug themselves into a stupor, just like heroin's bad for you, but you might feel really good while you're doped up, while your body shuts down.
On that
New age bullshit, people.
On that thread, Darren, of addictions, I mean, have we heard of a person being addicted to fruit and veg? Have we heard of a person being addicted to animal meat?
No, orthorexia is kind of it is an eating disorder. It's when you're obsessed with eating the right thing, but in the disordered mind, that right thing is more like a superstition or a phobia. It comes down to an ego problem because it's their microcosm that they can control. So whether it's washing your hands or only eating one thing, you have a lack. You're cognitively aware of the lack of a locus of control within the self. So you try to control yourself and thus the world externally, but obviously in a disordered way. So they control their existential fear and their anxiety through the ritual of this obsessive compulsive behavior, as opposed to doing the work on themselves. Because if you fortify the neocortex with proper nutrition, you are initially going to feel like hell because you're cognitively aware of where your lower animal nature is conflicting with your higher nature. So it's harder it's like breaking a wild animal, but the wild animal is yourself. That's the one you need to break. That's the one wild animal you need to freaking break, is your little shit ape lower self that every human being has. I mean, this is the magnum opus. Every human has to wrestle their base nature, start with the negrito, separate the white, and then add the catalyst of the alchemical, process. The point of human life is to grow. These people don't want to grow, so they ruin the faculties of mentation and cognition. Okay, they'd rather not think about all the horrible things that are going on than the things they need to change. So what they do is they silence the mind externally or by violence on their own bodies so as not to be aware of the things that bother them, which is called basically their conscience in a physical manifestation as pain.
Wow.
Preach, brother.
I have more clinical experience than this doctor. I really do. I used to live in a hospital, like never go home, like live. I would get mail there, dude. And I would sit there and I would listen to doctors and PhDs and master's level therapists and psychologists and forensic psychologists. And I'm just sitting there and I'm listening and I'm drooling because I'm on Thorazine and lithium. And I'm listening and listening and listening. And I'm gaining 10 pounds a month there because of neuroendocrine toxicity. And I'm getting injected monthly with piperazine derivatives, which is when you take a benzene ring and you add some other compounds, basically ammonia, and then it becomes an aromatized benzene ring, which is called piperidine, which is similar to the toxin in black pepper. Like if you had pure black pepper oil and you inject it into your body, it would harm your nerves. This is what it does to the neocortex when they put it in a bioavailable form, in the form of coconut oil, basically MCT and benzene piperazine derivatives, and they block out the neocortex. Then they have to prescribe atropine derivatives like benztropine to cope with the anticholinergic effects. Basically, they give you the antidote to nerve agents to calm the tremors. And if you go off those atropine derivatives like benztropine, the tremors come back. So all it does is suppress your body shaking, and like that's why like one quarter of my mouth doesn't move, because of like nerve damage. But I'm sitting there for years listening to doctors talk and talk and talk, and I'm reading the fucking books and I'm reading the Merck manual and I'm memorizing everything, albeit slower because I'm sedated. And I'm like listening and listening, bro. And I have like every waking hour for like years, bro, just listening to these fucking fraudsters and institutions. Yeah. And Like, no doctor has spent as much time as I have in a hospital. Maybe if they worked there for 40 years, they would have that much. Bro, like, a doctor only hears his own patient's business. Yeah, a long time ago, over 10 years ago. But a doctor only hears about his own patients. I slept by the nurse's desk in a room across from it. I heard every patient's business.
Yeah, I recently got my blood done, and I went in and met my new doctor, and she was like, "Oh, vegan, another Eastern European anti-vegan," and she's like, "Oh, your blood work's gonna be a mess." I get my blood work back, perfect. It's like people I just don't buy it, you know.
I'm seeing you over there munching on some tangerines. Are you okay, Jeffrey? How do you feel?
I need it to keep myself from getting scurvy.
Let's call Jeffrey an ambulance.
Ambulance.
Patient is ambulatory, not for long.
Well, I'm gonna take off, but kudos to you, Jeffrey. Like, your patience was really admirable. Like, way more mature than I would have been. I could not have handled that.
Yeah, that was the only thing I was worried about, but I guess I did okay.
You did.
I knew she was so full of shit, and I just needed to let her just talk, and everyone will just see, you know, like, I didn't even really need to say really that much to get her, you know.
No, it was inspiring. We'll have lots to go off of. I would like to go back and kind of review a lot of it and just kind of dive in.
No, you're right. That was a very helpful video for us, like, just to kind of show, like, this is one of your people.
Yeah, and this is one of your top people.
I found it shocking.
Top 10.
Shocking.
Like, yeah.
You know, they think
I'm also shocked. I am.
What's that?
They think they won the debate. You know that, right?
Oh no,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
no. They know. They're like, Jeffrey was disrespectful. She was trying to teach him. Yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah. She thinks you're a male chauvinistic pig that kept interrupting her. You're an asshole. And
if she would get one person who's on her side, another person who's a vegan, and a random, like, you know, a controlled study, she will find that she looked awful in this. It does not bode well for her.
No, there's not a single.
Bro, she's 63. She looked like she was 80.
There's not a single thing bad about this diet on the internet. Not a single video page. Except some stuff on Reddit.
Except the carnivore subreddit, because she's not carnivore enough for that.
Yeah.
So that was the only negative thing I saw.
Wow. If she's 63, she's 10 years older than me. Let's compare.
Oh, isn't Lance Armstrong 53?
Yeah.
Yeah, around there.
Yeah.
Not that, you know, that's mostly genetic.
That's neither here nor there. That's a different.
And I'm not trying to, but like going all fruit and veg and everything else it's been miraculous, and it gives you a glow, and it turns back the clock, and it just completely changes every aspect of your body, your health, just everything. And maybe she should do 30 days. Give it a try.
I think Natasha would probably tell us that, you know, some people use adrenochrome, and that's normal.
Oh, you know? My God. Oh,
she was doing a lot of, like, I'm going to say a bunch of stuff everyone's going to agree with, and they'll just not notice the bullshit. That's like, you know, that's like brainwashing 101. That's like, you can't be taken serious if you're just bringing nothing but the truth. You have to, or if you're bringing nothing but lies, no one's going to take you serious. You have to sprinkle it in with, like, you know, because she said a bunch of stuff that I agreed with, you know, like, sure, you know, the industrial agriculture system sucks.
Yeah,
you know, like,
I agreed. Yeah, and her conversation on soil, like,
yeah.
But that's not. She kept going back to the soil, the mycelium in the soil. Every time she felt like she was in trouble, she just kept going back to the mycelium. And I'm like, that's not what we're talking about. I'm talking about the bacteria they're finding in the stomachs of carnists. They're finding that this is the stuff that makes leaky gut, and they're only finding it in carnists. They're even finding it in vegetarians, but not in vegans. Like, how more
Did you know that?
What more do you need? And she's like,
That's
but it's the mycelium in the ground, and nothing's organic anymore. And it's like, so we can't do your diet unless we live in an alternate universe where everyone has complete access to or perfect real organic stuff and endless bone stock that hasn't been touched by another human being. Like
that's what they are, though. That's what they are.
Lifestyle.
They want to imagine a Jungle Book planet.
You don't do it perfect. Oh, that's why you failed. You didn't do it exactly how she said you have to do it, which is nothing bought from a store, everything bought from your neighbors. Like these like unrealistic circumstances.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's an imaginary perfect planet. They want to get you back to the Garden of Eden through violence. I mean, this is the same thing, dude. And they'll probably tell you we have access to other planets. It's called, the other New Agers. I mean, this is exactly how they roll. They're like remember, like bio. What is that bullshit symbiosis presentation from Funnel? The Rhythm of Life. See, these people have to be animists and imagine a primordial time before time, land before time psyop where all their shit works, and if everyone just did it, it would work. I mean, bro. Land. Yes, exactly. Tartaria, Eden, Mount Sinai, whatever they have to tell you to get the job done. Because let me tell you, adrenochrome isn't specific to humans. Animal adrenaline, when it oxidizes, does that too. Yep. And that's why these people are addicted to the excitotoxins that the bacteria in their gut fauna and flora feed off of.
That's why they feel good when they eat meat.
Yeah,
it's a fight or flight reaction.
A good feeling when they get their fix.
If you have meat in your mouth, that means that you're in a fight for your life. If you
winning,
smell blood
so you
or taste blood, your brain will release different hormones for you to deal with that situation, and that might be some even a natural adrenaline response.
People get
because you're having to fight
fighting.
something. If you're around blood and meat, you're obviously like in some fucked situation. You need to some survival situation.
Kind of
isn't what we're doing now.
You can get addicted to fighting, like kids that fight a lot start to enjoy it.
Yeah,
I did.
Sure.
I used to enjoy fighting. I did.
Yeah.
All the way through high school.
Watching UFC, dudes are saying all the time, I used to love doing this. I just fucking hate it now, like.
Yep.
For a while.
To be honest, I just think everything kind of changed. Like, I don't know. I used to watch UFC back when, like, Tank Abbott, who had, like, no fighting skills besides being a drunk, would step in and fight people who are, like, fucking third-degree black belts. That's when UFC was awesome.
Yeah, dude. My mom let me rent those as a kid, the originals.
Wow.
Oh, those were good. Oh, yeah, the old UFC Volume 1, 2, and... Oh, yeah, dude.
Good, too.
Shout out to Nate Diaz. Which way am I going? Nate Diaz.
All right, guys. I think I'm going to wrap things up. That was awesome. That went like I thought it would. Thanks for being there, everyone. Thanks for the super chats, a couple of super chats that came through. That money goes towards editing software that cuts up the video, our show, and Mark's work and puts it back on YouTube. So anyway, shout out to Cav for setting this up.
Oh, big shout out to Cav. Cav gets the gold medal for this one today.
Yeah. But we'll see you guys in the chat. Peace.
Yep. See you, man.
Bye.